Good evening to all of you cute little viewers and, I suppose, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Cuppa The Day podcast. Eagle-eyed viewers and bat-eared listeners may notice that it's me, Nualaoch, back again. No more Orion. I came back last week, found him sitting in my chair, and I have kicked him out of it, and I am here again. And along with me, as usual, we have Babz, we have Jorday. Babz, how you feeling this week? We started the British and Irish Pro Cup. It's an exciting time to be here.
Oh, we're like stuck bang in the middle of it. It's exciting times. I think everybody remembers BIPC 1, how good it was, and I'm getting those same vibes from BIPC 2. It's really fun. So yeah, it's been a good week. It's going to be a good week to come as well.
Be a great time, Jorday.
Yeah, it's been non-stop practice for me in terms of for BIPC anyway. It's trying to fit it in around work as much as I can because I do want to put in a good performance, especially now that there's a very tough competition coming forward. I'm sure we'll get into that, but
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have a great evening lined up here. We're going to be talking a lot about British and Irish Trackmania. Before we get into that, though, I said the words bat-eared, and so it's reminded me of one of my favorite zoology facts. All right, we're just going to throw one out there real quick to kind of get the people going, okay? Which is that for a long time, everyone thought that bats, because they fly in really big swarms, and everyone was like, wow, it's really impressive that they managed to use sonar in the middle of these swarms to not crash into each other. And then we got better imaging techniques, and we figured out that actually, no, bats are just constantly crashing into each other the entire time. There is nothing special going on. They're not dodging each other. They're just constantly hitting each other. And that's just really cool. God bless bats and their dumb little faces. And with that, I think we should probably introduce two people who do not have dumb little faces. We are joined by two guests this evening, and we're going to be bringing in Jaynemesis and Xephyr, aka Chris, who is also working on all the production behind the scenes. And so what we'll do is we will ask Jay to introduce himself first. Jay and Chris are here to talk a little bit about the history of British and Irish Trackmania. And Jay, you are very welcome here on the show.
Thanks for having me, I guess. Introduce myself. Oh, where do I start? Basically bad player, but really early. So, some people know me.
You know what? That's a pretty solid introduction. Chris, how are you doing? You are also producing the show as we do this, which is very unfair to you.
Just making sure to unmute my mic before I start talking. But yeah, I'm very good, very flustered, trying to set this all up before we went live. We're good.
Feeling good. I mean, do you want to tell the people a little bit more about what you do when you're not just producing this show for us?
I write questionable code. I play a little bit of football. Play some Trackmania. Well, I don't play Trackmania. I play GeoGuessr with Babz because apparently that's all we do in BITM at the moment is play GeoGuessr.
I mean, hey, the camera is mounted on a car most of the time, so I say count it. That seems, Trackmania adjacent enough for me. The plan here, I think, mostly is just to talk about British and Irish Trackmania, how the community kind of got its foundation and how it's been so far. So I guess, Jay, look, we're here to talk about it. We're going to get deep dive. We've got some stories to tell. Just kick things off, like, how did kind of the British and Irish Trackmania community really start to pick up as well? Because it really has, over the last few years, started to pick up.
Where do I start, really? I think the UK communities kind of had two kind of boom phases, and this is the second one. And the first one was probably roughly actually when Chris kind of surfaced. I think he surfaced like just in time for the first boom in Trackmania on Trackmania Forever, so Nations Forever. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. I remember back in like 2007. When I was first learning to drift, and I think there were like 5 players from the UK that could drift by like 2008. So it was it was bad, and of course there was no dirt back then. There was nothing exciting or fun like that. So I preferred it because of that. Yeah, the days of tech only, tech and full speed, and that was it.
You had me at tech and you lost me at full speed, I'll be honest.
Well, nobody had discovered speed sliding yet, so,
Okay, yeah, that sounds much better.
Exactly. Keyboard players loved the game back then.
Which Trackmania game is that back then? Because my history of Trackmania games stops at Trackmania 2020, so I'm a bit clueless with the older games. Really.
Starts and stops.
So Trackmania Nations ESWC was the first one in terms of like the stadium environment, and then after that there was Trackmania Nations Forever, and then TM2, and everything else. I think you know the history from there. So
Trackmania DS. Can't forget Trackmania DS. Very important.
Trackmania Turbo, you know.
Vital.
Wait, can you give us some sort of because obviously like the way, I mean, this is the first time I'm speaking to you, and the way Chris has kind of portrayed you is like you being the, I don't know, kind of like the first player, and we've all descended from you, or something like that, kind of thing. Which is a weird way of putting it, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
kind of. I think some credit needs to go to Foe and R2K. So Foe is a name that I think quite a lot of people should know, and if you don't, you should probably research him, because he was easily a top 5 player in the world, I would say, for 4 or 5 years. He was like Pac, but a decade ago. So yeah, he obviously deserves some credit. But in terms of the UK scene, I think really I was the person that tried to make it happen. Tried to build a community of some sort. Before me, there really wasn't much. I remember there were a couple of teams that surfaced. There was a full speed team called FBI. There was there was a team called Best Car Shaguar. So that was cool. There was a team called UKFC, and that was pretty much it. And then you had like Dignitas, which was a British organization but had no real British players. And that was it. That was it back in like 2006, 2007. And it was only really in 2008 that things started to evolve with more teams kind of surfacing and more communities building in the UK, more servers, more good players in the UK as well.
I'd be kind of interested because obviously with the release of TM 2020, I think there is, you talked a little bit, there's been a big second boom. I think TM 2020 helped with that. Did the release of new games kind of back then in the first boom, was that part of it? Was there influxes of new players when new games released, or was it kind of just steady growth the entire way through across games?
Yeah, I think there was Trackmania Nations Forever was really a big jump forward, I think, because it added so much more to the game. Like, imagine you've only got roadblocks, no platform. Platform didn't exist back then. You had no dirt. The grass that you had available was the stadium grass. That was it. Like, make your tracks using just those things. It was pretty difficult. So yeah, when Forever came around, we got all the new blocks, and there were also the other styles of games. I think that brought a lot of people into the Trackmania kind of world, and then most of them found their way to the stadium environment. So yeah, I think that was like massive. And honestly, Stadium, Trackmania Nations Forever and Stadium on that game just kept growing for a really, really long time. I think it was actually honestly just the kind of the long fallout in the esports world from the financial crisis that actually kind of killed off that game a bit, to be honest. Because all the sponsorships dried up, all the tournaments started to disappear in like 2011, 2012. ESWC went under. Frostbule got very frustrated with that. Like, yeah, it was a pretty crazy time. But there was a period of time where, back then the main format for competitive Trackmania was team matches. So it's kind of nice actually looking at like TMGL going back to like this kind of 2v2 format, seeing things kind of transition back in that direction, because I thought it was awesome back then. It was really cool. I'm sure Chris will probably agree with that as well.
The Nations Forever kind of years, 2009, 2011.
Yeah.
I would say that was helped by ESL. ESL put a lot of money into the scene, not just the UK scene, but just Trackmania in general. So there were two main organizations hosting tournaments. There was ESL hosting a whole bunch of team and solo stuff, and then there was ET Generation, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And that was just completely for fun. There was no prize money, no nothing. It was just a big community thing. And then ESL leaving Trackmania at some point was pretty harmful. But especially in the UK Trackmania, ESL really kind of gave us a boom in 2009 by coming in and giving us the ESL Pro Series, which was a series they ran in loads of different regions, and it was regionalized. So it was ESL Pro Series UK, and I think that was 2,000, 3,000 pounds of prize money in the first year, which is why I think Jono is still in the top 30 Trackmania players of total prize earnings ever somehow. But yeah, that was good. And like Jay said, there wasn't many teams. It was mostly just communities and servers, because back then there were lots of servers that people would go and hop onto. It doesn't really feel like that's much of a thing with TM 2020 anymore, but back then it was lots of community servers. You'd kind of jump around. There weren't really many teams or team tournaments. And then ESL came in, and all of a sudden all the orgs were interested in UK players, because we had a UK only tournament with some prize money. And people like Jono and Hotswat started getting picked up by the likes of Dignitas and trying to integrate into the best team in Trackmania. And I think Hotswat talked a little bit about the struggles of that and being shunned by the other players in the lineup initially. It's like, oh, it's just a UK player, they're nowhere near good enough for our team.
Couldn't be TM 2020. Could never be. Actually, I just want to pivot slightly on that one as well and talk, because you mentioned servers and how very much the older games were much more focused around specific servers. And I know I started with Stadium and play with TM2 Stadium and playing on Time to Shine, which was the big French server. And me and a friend who were in that stage of, we're learning how to drift and trying to beat each other and being shocked even when we got a clean run that we were still 5 seconds behind the times at the top in every round. Was it kind of like, we basically then would play on one server? Was there kind of a similar thing back then? Do you guys remember the names of any of the big servers? Like, was there communities on some of the big servers as well?
Yeah, I mean, there were loads of different communities back then, I think, and loads of servers that I think people regulared. I mean, even to be honest, some of them were just training servers for some of the big tournaments like STC and stuff, and you'd go in there and you'd see all of the top players were practicing at the same time and stuff. There was none of this like training offline and hiding your records so much back then. Most people just played together. I mean, there was a bit, but most people just kind of played together. But I still remember there was a round server in the UK that I think was called like Mad Laps or something. And that was just like, it was just this really strange server, because everyone was like, it kind of, you were either competitive server or you were just like complete garbage, and they were sort of like this weird server that was in the middle and used a rounds format when everyone else was doing just time attack servers. So yeah, you go on there and they were all like laps tracks as well, so it was like 6 laps or something on this really weird non-styled half speed tech half, it was almost like Nadio style tracks. So yeah, it was a pretty weird server, but it was so much fun. I really loved that server. And then you saw like, the development of RPGs and stuff when block mixing first kind of got discovered, and all sorts of strange stuff from there. But yeah, it was fun. There were quite a few different communities that people kind of frequented.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Mad Labs, because I think Liffy mentioned it in chat there. Yeah, but Hotswat has like, I mean, whenever you kind of mention the past to like Chris, or you mention it to Hotswat or somebody like that, they can go on for hours about stories and different competitions they had. I know Hotswat talks until you fall asleep, but yeah. but Hotswat mentions Mad Labs quite a lot, and it's kind of like this really fun, kind of interesting, kind of community driven, well, like most things in Trackmania, community driven kind of event. And like it's really cool, because it's kind of like you get a blast from the past, and like us coming into the game, it's coming up to about 2 years probably that I've been getting into Trackmania, and it kind of feels like we've had that resurgence again. So you talked about having 2 different booms. It's kind of like getting into TM 2020. There's a community there that has to be developed again, and that it feels like that happened a long time ago, and then there was that kind of dead space maybe in between, which is like just super interesting, because a lot of us only know Trackmania, from a few years back, and then going back to, as you're saying, like 17 years ago. It's like the history and pedigree of the game is just so deep rooted.
Yeah, I think the craziest thing is when you look at like the pro scene and you see players like French Carl, for example, who has just been around forever. I remember watching him and Karyan as well, watching them in like the first kind of really, really early tournaments, and then realizing that they're still playing, and it's like we're approaching 20 years that those guys have been playing this game. So yeah, I think that's a super cool kind of thing to look back on. And yeah, I mean, as you said, like the stories that you can talk about back then of like, I mean, the other big thing really that I think a lot of the stories come from back then as well is all of the LAN gaming events. So there were, you used to have DreamHack, you used to have obviously things like Gamers Assembly and stuff that kind of still going, but there were LANs in Portugal. You had XL Party. There were even some in Canada. There were events all over the place, and in Norway and stuff. And players would, probably like kind of crowdfund themselves to go to these events, knowing that they're not going to make any money back, really. Unless you win, you're losing money by doing this. But the community was just so strong that people would fund these different players to go from different regions and stuff. And it was the same for ESWC as well. The ESWC events, sometimes it was the case that it was just rich countries getting qualifiers, and you had these like fantastic players from places that had no money and no budget, and the community would try and get them to go to these events. So yeah, there's all sorts of like really cool stories around ESWC and things as well. The famous Yazid being one of them.
Which now you have to tell the story. I mean, you can't just drop a line like famous Yazid.
Well, I mean, he kind of became a bit of a meme. I can't even remember what country he was from. I don't know if it was like the United Arab Emirates or something.
Saudi Arabia, I think.
Was it Saudi Arabia? It could have been, yeah. Yeah, well, there were a couple. There were two players like that at the same event. So that was ESWC 2008, and actually, I think pretty much like every early ESWC had a player like this who had come from a country that just threw money at a qualifier because, I don't know, they had money to spare. And these people who had probably never played the game until they saw that there was a tournament and a free holiday to whatever country ESWC was in, rocked up, won their qualifier, and then turned up at the event, and everyone was just like, I mean, it was just crazy seeing like all of these professional players, and then this guy who literally hasn't even encountered every block in the game, probably trying to navigate at the same time as these pro players. And it was just hilarious and so much fun. And like the community back then, you used to have relay servers, so you didn't watch it on streams because live streaming wasn't a thing yet, really. So everyone used to just jump onto the servers, these servers in Trackmania that basically mimicked the real server, and the whole like chat and everything kind of cheering on this guy called Yazid and saying that he's going to make a comeback and he's got this was just like phenomenal to see. It was so much fun.
I love that. That's so funny. I think I heard at some point that obviously people who cast in video games are called shoutcasters, and that actually came from a specific plugin that was used because StarCraft had a similar system for a long time where you just jumped into a server and there was a specific plugin to get casters while you were watching the game that was called Shoutcast. And that's how it ended up becoming shoutcasters. But yeah, like it's just it's been there in the esports community, to say, it's been there for so long, and it's great to see it growing again. It's particularly interesting, I think, at this point, because you're talking there about how originally a lot of it was crowdfunded and there was a lot of not necessarily community events at the time. I think there's a lot of community LANs potentially happening over the next couple of years and stuff as well. But it's happening at a time that esports is struggling a little bit again as a whole. Like there's big teams that are currently looking at it and being like, do we want to be here? Trackmania feels like it's a little bit safer maybe than some of the other ones, just because so much of it is just community driven. Like there's less going on with need for outside investment at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty similar back then, like it really does feel like sort of deja vu, really. I mean, even if you kind of like look at the sort of weird economic circumstances, like in 2008, 2009, you had like the whole global financial crash and everything, and all the massive teams all kind of just disappeared overnight. We used to have like SK Gaming and Faculty and Mouse Sports and all of these like really big esports organizations in Trackmania, eSuba, Four Kings, Infused. Yeah, like there were so many teams, and then over the course of like 2 years, they all just kind of disappeared. And all of these events that had prize money, half of them were community run, and you had things like, as Chris mentioned, the ET generation stuff, so STC, and they did the Trackmania World Cup essentially back then. I think they called it Nations Cup or something. And all of that was just like voluntary. And because the community had like built all of these events themselves and stuff, it meant that when that stuff did disappear, the community kind of survived and kept going for a surprisingly long time when a lot of other games at the time were really starting to struggle.
It's like it's super interesting that you mentioned like those. I think you mentioned like those other games who kind of come out nowadays have a massive rise in popularity, and then an esports is created, a lot of money is pumped into it, and then 2 years down the line, everybody looks at the situation like, okay, what do we do now? Because we're not getting our money back. Whereas, you know, Trackmania, which has been around for so long, and now with TM 2020 coming out, kind of feels like it's adopted more of a kind of a normal growth, if you can say that. It's much more progressive, and since it's so community driven, I mean, we can talk about that perfectly. Like the events, all the events that we put on is all, you know, community made. It's only this first event, so BIPC2, where some of the money isn't coming from the community. It's through a partnership with ITB, which you know, when we were like discussing with the admins and the other people behind the scenes, felt like a kind of a step forward kind of thing. Like we're getting support because what we're doing is good. It's like, yeah, it's because you mentioned like Trackmania being a bit more safe, and I feel like that's kind of why it is that. It's because it's got that bedrock of like the community and not everything being dependent on massive organizations and big money support.
And no disrespect to ITB, but they could disappear tomorrow and there'd probably still be a BIPC tournament 3 in 6 months, a year's time, whatever. Like the things are here to stay in the Trackmania community in a lot of ways, and it comes down to people like Chris, like Jay here. You know, you've been around organizing or helping or seeing events for a long time, and there's expertise there that maybe isn't there for, you know, the first time an Overwatch game was run and everyone's a zoomer and who knows what's going on, and so everything has to be organized by an external party. And if everything's organized by an external party, you're just stuck relying on an external party at that point. And it's great. I love seeing it. And, you know, there's been the rise as well now of being able to easily broadcast your own tournament, being able to do it and get more of the community involved that way. And Chris, like, you've been doing a great job with the production side of British and Irish Trackmania for the last while. And I think we're getting a lot of people involved in that side as well. And it just means that it'll keep growing. Like, more people will see what's going on. You can get more people interested in the community that way as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things about our community. Sorry.
There's
people in the chat requesting that you prove that you're not muted. I just sorry about that.
Yeah, those are my IRL friends who have obviously found that I'm doing this podcast, and they're doing a little bit of trolling, but trying my best to ignore what they're saying. I just wanted to touch on something Jay mentioned earlier about how community servers were so prevalent back in the day of Trackmania, I assume. And at least in my experience with Trackmania, you don't really see like the live community servers active at all, apart from maybe Evo Ice and Evo Beginner, Evo Full Speed Beginner. You don't really see anything more than that. My only experience of live community servers would be I don't know if any of you played like Skill Surf, CS Surf, CSGO Surf, that kind of thing, and that's very live community server driven. I know Babz has played that, and obviously there's Tux as well. He's one of the upcoming UK players. But I'm curious as to why you guys might think that nobody really plays on these servers anymore, other than maybe the live campaign server and the Evo servers. Is it because there is so much content now to explore within the community, not just in BITM community, but all across Trackmania?
I think there's a couple of reasons. The first reason, the community servers were such a big thing in Trackmania before Ubisoft bought Nualaoch.
Careful now.
Oh, no, it's getting interesting.
Spicy.
Yeah. Okay. So the community servers were so big in Trackmania before that, because they were just free to play. There was no restrictions. You buy the game and you have the game and you can do whatever you want in the game. And the community servers, like the server list and how many people are on each server, it would just be front and center when you load the game up. You don't have to go through menus to find it. It's right there in front of you. Your friends list is right there in front of you in the UI of the game, and it shows you what server they're playing on. So if you can see that 4 of your friends are playing on server X, you're like, I'm just going to go join them instead of going off and doing whatever. Or like the current UI doesn't really signpost you towards any content.
100% going to agree with you.
It almost feels like a dead game. weirdly
Yeah,
until
I
you
was
find
gonna say
the
like
things that you want to go and
I
do.
was going to say, I think it's a UI issue as much as anything, right? Like servers are not just presented as like, hey, here's a server with 50 people in it. Want to jump in? Like, whereas that very much felt like the case in the old game. I loaded up the game for the first time and jumped into a server called Time to Shine and then ended up spending like, 6 months there because it was just there. Like it was when I was trying to figure out what is there to do here, it was servers. You went on it. I do wonder, has Cup of the Day had anything to do with it as well? Because like for a lot of people, you come home, you want to play a bit of Trackmania in the evening. For a lot of people, you do that. You come home, you jump on 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, wherever you are in Europe, and you play on a new map for a while. And you're like, okay, I've played a bit of Trackmania for the evening. You don't need to go out of your way to find other content.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think some of that as well comes from new players coming into the game now. I think we can talk about like those content creators. So like we've probably had a virtual wave. So like many players have come in from virtual. So people are discovering.
It's me.
Yeah. So many people have discovered the game through external like content creators and haven't like just discovered the game through a friend or through someone at school or something. And then you load up the game and then you have to discover it yourself. Whereas if you're watching somebody like virtual, you see him playing Cup of the Day, you see him playing these specific maps. When you launch up the game for the first time, you're going to look for that, as soon as you get into it. I think it's probably changed a lot since then. And to touch on that, I wanted to see with Chris and Jay, like back then, like, pre-2010s, you didn't, I don't know, did you probably didn't have Discord. I'm going to sound like such a Zoom rat. But like, how did this community kind of like stay alive and communicate?
You knew certain people,
Pigeons?
and you had a Ventrilo server, and you were on that, or a TeamSpeak server, and you just existed on that. But then there were also IRC channels for things like ESL tournaments and the ET Generation tournaments. But you have to figure out how IRC works, which not everyone can do.
Honestly, it was a mix of everything, and there was also MSN Messenger and Skype became really big for a while as well.
Throwback.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was messy. It was really hard to organize anything back then. Like and one of the things Chris didn't mention about the friends list, as amazing as it was, is it had a limit, right? And the limit wasn't high. You could basically fit your teammates on it.
Like 64 people or something.
Yeah, I think back then probably like the average team, like if it was a community team, it would be like 25, 30 people. If it was more of an esports team, it'd be like between 10 and 15. And so immediately like use up most of your slots on just like those people. Then you add like your real life friends or the people that you really play with regularly or people from your country and things. And then you've almost got no space left for anyone else. To the point where people would be like really strategic with how they do it. They wouldn't add most of their own team to their friends list because they had those people on Ventrilo or on TeamSpeak, so they could just ask them where they're playing. And yeah, also there's I think another thing on the streaming point that you mentioned in terms of why there's not so many people playing in servers is because people can watch it now. And you couldn't do that before. Or if you were doing that, you were doing it in a relay server in Trackmania. So in many ways, live streaming's actually kind of like diminished the amount of like players and community kind of feeling that we get on Trackmania because so many you have 1,000 people or something watching virtual or Scrappy or whoever it may be. All of these people are just sitting in those live streams and not on the game. Whereas previously they would be on the game if they wanted to hang out with those people. You still had those kind of personalities. People would gather around, the big pro players. They'd gather around some of the kind of funny people, and you'd obviously have all the tournaments and things as well that were kind of drawing people together. So yeah, like so much has changed that I think has led to this situation.
Discord's such a fantastic way to organize as a group, though, because back then, if you wanted to go and talk to your friends who played Trackmania, you'd log in and you'd see what server they're on, and you'd go and join them on the server, and you'd type to them in the server between rounds or between runs, and then you'd find out they've got a TeamSpeak server, and you'd go and join them. Now, like, you just join a whole bunch of Trackmania-related communities on Discord, and you can be in a voice call with someone who's playing GeoGuessr, or someone else is training for a tournament, someone else is just watching a stream, and someone else is in a server. Like, you don't have to all be in the same server together to be enjoying the game or enjoying a community. So
like fully part of how I've started to do more casting for Trackmania is obviously Babz gave me my start with IOC. I owe all my success to him. But also then I was like, yeah, that was great fun. I really like casting Trackmania. So I literally went and I joined a bunch of Discord servers to see what events are coming up, like what's going on, who's doing stuff. Mini RPG of the Week was literally starting like the week I did that. And, you know, I started working with them. I was just literally messaging random people who were running events and being like, hey, need anyone to work your event? I know a producer. I can do some talking. What's up? And like, yeah, it's a lot of fun like that. I do also want to say that mentioning MSN Messenger, to derailing from Trackmania for a second there, unlock core memories I did not know I had of lots, just so much awkward flirting in my early teens on MSN Messenger. Oh, just terrible messages. Oh dear.
Oh, don't worry. We'll dedicate an episode to going through your old MSN.
I mean, how would you?
conversations.
Nobody wants that, man. So
Yeah.
many text emojis. Oh god.
It's so funny because like so many of the talking points we're bringing up is like for like Jorday, myself, and Nua, it's like more recent. So we talk about something that's happening now, and then we're asking you guys like, but how did you do this back then, or how did that happen? It's like it's kind of like your parents telling you that at your age they had to walk 10 miles to school. And you're so lucky, kind of thing.
God. Yeah, I mean, I do remember the days of using TeamSpeak for gaming and stuff as well, though, and like kind of a similar thing where, you know, Discord, you can just see who's in a voice chat already. Like with TeamSpeak, you are either just blind guessing the people are on the server, or like, yeah, you message someone and be like, hey, we're all jumping on TeamSpeak now. Do you want to jump on? Like it was a bit more effort to actually organize people into the voice call. But like, yeah, I mean, some really great memories from just sitting in voice calls on TeamSpeak then for hours because you actually managed to get people on. And I'd imagine it was kind of a similar thing that like when you actually get people then and you have a big group in the TeamSpeak, it's like, it feels like more of an event than just, you know, jumping in a Discord call with people.
Or total chaos, but yeah.
Or, I remember I had
TeamSpeak
Trying to
always
get the
came
whole of
across
the
so serious.
UK players to
Yeah.
join the same Ventrilo to qualify for a tournament.
Trying to get people to turn up for matches, trying to schedule
Yeah.
matches with other
Yeah.
teams. I mean, it
Skype.
still blows my mind that ESL. I remember this actually. Speaking to Death Driver, who used to be the main admin for ESL for Trackmania, and Trackmania was ESL's biggest game out of everything. People think it was Counter-Strike, or they think it was, you know, Quake 3 or Unreal Tournament, or all of these other things that had, you know, big communities and big prize money and stuff. But Trackmania had more players than any other game on ESL for like a good year or so. And the team tournament, it had, I think it had 15 divisions for a team tournament, and the lineups that you need, the number of players that you needed even just to compete in a match was, I think, 6, because it was made up of like 1v1s and 2v2s and 3v3s and a 5v5. And so like in total, you're talking like every week you would get something like 1,000, 1,500 people playing on a Saturday at the same time in this one league, and that's just one league. And it's just crazy when you think about it that the community was that big, and like that's what excited me so much when I saw you know, this new Trackmania coming out in 2020 and looking at you know, looking at the potential of it again, and thinking, you know, this could be a rebirth opportunity, because as much as everyone likes to hate on Nadio, I think they got a lot of things right with this Trackmania at that launch. Like I think it. Well, I know, and Chris will tell you as well, that there are a lot of us, and Hotspot, I'm sure, mentioned it. There were a lot of us that came back who hadn't played the game and touched the game in years and years and years, just to see, and you know, was everyone still around? Is you know, is the game still as fun as it used to be, and the community still there?
I'm going to be really interested because speaking about that, they're in the middle of their console launch at the moment. I mean, have been now for the last couple of months. I'm wondering if that's actually going to bring more people into existing communities, because obviously if you're playing on console, I'd imagine chat is going to be either limited or just not there at all for most console players. How many of them are actually going to manage to discover the community spaces and actually get involved in that way is, I think, an interesting question that we're going to see answered over the next couple of months.
Yeah,
Discord on console?
It's on PS4. It's on PlayStation, isn't it? Sorry. I think
that'd be pretty huge for BOTM, I feel like, in terms of getting people to join the community.
Just us.
Screw everyone else. It's more like, BITM comes first.
Why does BITM not simply eat all the other smaller communities? Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, to see, because there's plenty of friends who I'd recommend the game to, who are not gamers in the capital G sense of the word, have a PC and the rest, but like they have a console, they're happy to play whatever. And like Trackmania is a game that I think is very easy to recommend to people as well. And if they have a console, they can just get the game and try it. People are going to play it. Like, it's definitely going to be played, but I'm not convinced yet that it's going to bring this whole new wave of people into existing spaces, just because it's going to be hard for them to interact with them.
I do feel though that, like, so you've got so many people watching these content creators like Virtual and so many growing up now, and I think a lot of their viewer base either have never played Trackmania or don't have access to it yet. And I feel like there's going to be a portion of that at least, and there's going to be a big wave initially that is going to discover it, and that will already probably have access to these sort of forums and discords and all that. And then, yeah, I mean, as you say, it's all about, do they stick around, and what impact does that have on the wider kind of community? It's going to be interesting to see how that interacts between console players and sort of the main core of PC players. Will we be overwhelmed then by all the console players? We'll
get swept aside.
Yeah, we'll be the minority, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, hey, something to look forward to anyway when that does get released. I know it's been through its beta and things over the past while. People have had their hands on it now. Yeah, I think, look, British and Irish Trackmania, it's great. It's been around for a while. Is there anything else that we really want to touch on this topic, or do we want to kind of move on? We have a couple more segments to head to.
I think we're gonna come back to it afterwards. So we'll take a little break from it, talk about something else, and we'll get right back to it.
And I mean, what is something else we have to talk about? Obviously, the British and Irish Pro Cup has kicked off. Week 1 is done. Plenty of people have been kicked out of that top 24 already and are down in prospects, but that is a pretty stacked top 24 that we have lined up starting next weekend, but Saturday and Sunday, going to be streamed here on this channel as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, Babz, do you want to just talk a little bit more about what actually went down last weekend with regards to the BIPC?
Yeah, so BIPC, it's probably been the biggest event that we've launched to date, which I feel like we say every time we do an event, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it kicked off, what was it, just over a week and a half ago with the release of the map pack. There was a week of TA, so time attack on the 4 maps. Actually a great map pack, I have to say, that we've got this year. I have to shout out Asa, who did a great job with all the map testers. But yeah, that kicked off about a week and a half ago, and then the previous weekend that's just gone by, we had the first official matches. So we had a seeding event which lasted about an hour over a few servers, where all the players who had signed up played 8 rounds on each map, and then at the end they resulted, they had a seeding score. And then everybody was put into a seeding table, and then subsequently the top 32 was put into the main bracket, and everybody beneath that was put into the prospects, which is something new that we brought this year into BIPC, which has done really well as well, which I'll touch on as we move through. But yeah, so that happened last week, and we've come out with a top 24 who are going into what I like to call the main event, which is this weekend.
Listen, chat's already malding about us saying that they were kicked out of the top 24, so I don't know if we want to call it a main event. We might upset a few of the prospects players.
Don't worry, prospects guys, a lot of praise is coming your way.
Keep on practicing.
I'm trying.
Okay, man.
Yeah, so basically that's the story up until now, and we've got a really exciting weekend of Trackmania coming. Hopefully showcasing some of the real talent that we've been nurturing over the past few years.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, we have 2 players here who are currently sitting in that top 16, or at least sitting in it.
Oof.
We're top 24. Close enough.
3 players.
Wherever we're actually at.
3 players, yeah.
3?
Yeah.
Who's the
3,
third? Is it me? Am I in the top 24?
Who's the third? Come on now.
Who are the 2 that you think it is? And then the other one could be offended.
Well, I figured out where Jay is, and I know I'm not there at all. So, I think I can probably figure it out. Well, Babz, where are you sitting at the moment?
Oh, really? Out of your
your lower bracket. I didn't even bother looking at the losers bracket. I mean, It's kind of in the name, isn't it?
Sorry, I've been kicked down to the lower bracket. I guess I don't matter anymore.
Yeah. I mean, hey, maybe you can just make the Cinderella story run down there from the lower bracket. But I was looking at the top 16, the upper bracket that's still there. Obviously, Chris and Jorday, you're both still sitting up there, still feeling pretty good. But like, we finished our matches last Saturday, and I was immediately looking at all of them. Yeah, I was like, which is fair enough. I looked at all the matches and I was like, man, every single one of these matches is stacked.
Yeah, it is extremely scary. I think I knew in time attack I wasn't going to do as good as I thought I'd do, because I don't really consider myself a time attack player. I kind of pride myself on performing in round situation, and when it came to the seeding phase, I think that went fairly well, I'd say. And I believe my first match had me, Rue, Floyd, and Vic, I think. And I was expecting second because Rue is an insane player, right? We got into the match, and then I think it got into just me and Rue left, and I choked the end, and I'm so annoyed with that, because I would have been in a much easier match, because I would have been with Babz, which is, he's going to win. It is what it is. But it would have been me, Gib, and N7, I believe, and that would have been a lot nicer of a match compared to what I have at the moment, which is me, Epos,
very
Jaffa,
doable,
and Crispy. And oh my god, like on pace, like these guys are on a whole another level compared to me. I need, like, I'm hoping that they choke and I can just beat them on consistency, because there's no way I'm going to outpace these guys.
Yeah, it's over the past few days, Jorday is just like, there's been a silence in VC, and he just says, "Oh man, I could have taken Rue."
It's so sad. I think Rue could probably, I don't know if he watches the streams or not, but I'm sure he would say it was a pretty back and forth match between me and him. It's quite good, really. But yeah, hopefully I can match him again in a future one.
I mean, Chris, you're poised to knock the only Irish player in the top 16 down into the lower bracket.
I really don't matter anymore, do I?
No. Me and the only Irish player in the bracket are poised to get knocked down to the lower bracket by the Welsh.
Well, I mean, these things happen. It's not for the best. It's very sad, but I guess we do. It would be nice to have some representation that is not English in the top 8. So at least that's guaranteed to come out of your match.
True. Yeah. I'd like to think that maybe 6 months ago I'd be coming second in that match, and a year ago I definitely would be coming second in that match. Now I don't think I have much of a chance, which is an interesting point to touch on, is the difference between BIPC 1 and BIPC 2. The difference in just the time attack alone. So the top 16 in BIPC 1 were separated by oh no. Wrong spreadsheet. So we were separated by 3.3 seconds. And
that was on the quiz.
This time around,
it was.
This time around, 1.7 seconds. It's one less map, but per map that's still a big improvement. And if you look at the top 32, it's the top 32 is separated by 3.8 this time, whereas last year that was almost 7 seconds. So the improvement in just generally, even though we've lost some key players in Pack and Saber and Jono from entering the tournament, the level overall has just skyrocketed. So many people have been training really hard all year, or just playing a lot and getting better, and joining teams. Like when BIPC first came around, no one was really in a team. I think I was in M&M, but everyone else they were just discovering the game. Now
you're still in M&M, Chris. They're still there.
Apparently. No, but now we've got 4 players in Wombo. We've got players in XLT looking at Challenger League. We've got the whole Good Focus team. Got players in Molotov. Got just players everywhere joining teams. Joining teams outside of our community as well, and just sharing knowledge and getting better. And it's really cool to see. Sucks for me because I'm going to the lower bracket, but it's cool to see.
I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's going to be tough.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be, I mean, every match is tough. Like I'm in the lower bracket and I'm looking at, well, I think I just found out because for those who don't know, there was 2 players from top 32 who couldn't make it. Top 24 who couldn't make it to this weekend's matches. So actually, I think it's a pretty decent ratio that 22 of the players are committed to, spending a weekend playing. But we had to run then a kind of qualifier between the I think it was the 3rd place players from their lower bracket 1 match so that first weekend. It was between Floyd's Matt P and Vig from Split, and the 2 winners that came out of that were Vig and Matt P. So they're back into the top 24. And I'm so sad because I'm facing off against Matt P, one of my teammates. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, speaking of the bracket, I think we're going to transition over to a little bit of a scene where the 5 of us.
Bit of work for Chris. Chris, you're on camera. Don't mess it up. Everyone will see it. Everyone will see your reaction.
First time in an hour.
Oh, that was a good button press, Chris. Well done.
So yeah,
I think you should do it again. Go back and come back again.
Oh, show it's time to show off.
Wait, can I do a hotspot transition?
Yeah. 3,
Oh,
2,
beautiful.
1.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the scene was custom made for the episode, as you can see. We paid a lot of money for this one.
Why is there a list randomizer open? Just based, given that you were meant to be doing some predictions here.
No, that's unrelated to the predictions. That's
Just
why
pick a
Boz
number.
keeps spamming maps in the
Buzz
chat.
clueless.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, listen, we'll get to revealing the map order at some point. It can't be that important.
So altogether, the 5 of us now, we're gonna somehow go through all these matches that we've now said are all so close and evenly matched, and we're gonna try and decide who wins BIPC 2. And this will be the script for this weekend, so we better make it a good one.
Babz spamming maps
Babz
has,
fourth.
unfortunately for him, locked him down into the lower bracket after that. The script is going to say that now. So, unfortunate, really.
So with the first match, I think we can all agree that Boz is probably going to win this one.
Oh,
You'd hope so. I mean, come on. He's a top 2 contender, top 3 contender.
I think
mean,
we need to talk about it just a bit, just so we make it, like as if it's not too obvious.
No,
I
I
think
think
okay, we talked about it. Moving on.
one.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there was last time there was a bit of an upset, wasn't there? So you never know.
The incident.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. The incident that should not be named or talked about. Sorry, Boz.
But yeah, I think we can all agree that probably Buzz comes first in that match. And that's not diminishing Rue, Gibbo, or N7. Like, I've got so much praise for all 3 of those players. You're like looking back at the IPC 1. So firstly, I don't think Gibbonster and N7 were around back then. Rue, I think he was, and I think he actually made top 16.
Rue played in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
and top 16.
But like, I think since BIPC 1 is where he's really made a name for himself. I think everybody knows he's just such a good player. He's kind of part of that duo with Jaffa at the top of Scotland. Gibbo, as I played against him in my first match, and he was extremely impressive in rounds. Kind of, he's improved a lot. And then N7 is a bit of a wonder kid coming out of Northern Ireland. Like, just so impressive, the rise in level that he's had, not only from like last BIPC, because he wasn't around back then, but just like a few months ago back to BIPL kind of thing.
I don't think anybody knew who he was in BOPL, did they? I mean, at least
Nope.
I don't think many people knew who about N7, and he has completely stepped up. Again, same with Gibbo. And I mean, these 3 for me are extremely close. And I've seen how Gibbo played in the match with you, Babz, and Epos, and I can't remember who the 4th member was.
OC.
OC, sorry, yeah. I would actually have Gibbo to become second in this match.
Ooh.
I don't know if anyone else agrees with me on that.
I disagree.
Listen, I just want to say with regards to N7, I think the longer he manages to stay in the tournament, the scarier he becomes for anyone he has to face, because he challenged Jaffa Padawan in their round 1 match, and it was more, I don't know if it was nerves, but it kind of looked like that. He started to look shakier as the match went on, and it started to look like, yeah, maybe he really can beat Jaffa. And if he manages to stay in, if it was nerves and he gets more experience playing in a competition setting, like, he becomes a really, really scary player really, really quickly. But for the second round up against like Rue, Gimster, Babz, I'm not convinced he's going to be one of the top 2 making it out of it.
Yeah,
Honestly, I think he could be. I think he could be last in that group. I think the thing is that him and N7 don't have as much match experience as Rue does. Rue's already done this once, and I think when you get to these kind of stages, you start moving up the ranks. The pressure starts to build a bit more. So I don't know. I see Rue taking second. To be honest,
I agree with that. Yeah,
I back it. I see it.
I think it's then a toss up between the other two. N7's just got good so quickly that like you just don't know, do you?
Have we considered though that Rue did nearly lose to Jorday? Should that maybe knock him
that
down a place?
That is shameful. How could anyone do that? I think Rue just took a while to warm up into the match, and I think as soon as he did, he just like kicked my ass, and that is what it is. But I think like Gibbo is so underrated, and I think he a very strong rounds player, and I think on the day I could really see him beating Rue. I mean, obviously it's weird to have a discussion of who comes second in this, but my vote is definitely on Gibbo.
Well, I'd say Rue's second. I think there's probably a majority consensus on that. And then I'd say just Gibbo just ahead of N7, even though I'm looking forward to seeing that fight because it's going to be a really interesting one. But I think that's probably how I see that match going.
You know what? I back it. Can I also, do we have anyone who's a mod in chat? Can we try and get a poll going so chat can vote on their order as well? Is that possible? I feel like we could do that somehow. Or at least on who's going to win the match. I don't know. Someone will figure that out. Someone will figure that out. And if they don't, well, it's just interesting to see. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously everyone's going to have opinions on this. I think it sounds like we're landing consensus with dissent on Rue in second place. And I think then it sounds like probably it's a decent argument to put Gibbonster in third in that one as well. And 7, unfortunately, someone has to come last in this match. Someone's going to have to come last in all of these matches. And in no case is it going to feel good because they're all very, very good players.
And that's even more the case in this second match. It's just the 4 players, man.
It's just nuts. It's just an insane second match. Wizzy, Leo, Dvinho, and Roy all in one match. I don't know. Where do you even start?
Wizzy.
Yeah. Start with Wizzy on that one.
Probably with Wizzy. Yeah, I would say.
I mean, yeah, we hype it up, and then it's just an easy, like, yeah, it's probably still Wizzy though, right?
For me, this one, like second place in this one is it's a decider between Leo and Royboy. Royboy's obviously got a lot of experience in this game, and recently went to a LAN and performed really well and got to the finals in the Netherlands. Leo, we haven't really seen much of Leo in this game at all, apart from setting the world record on one of the BIPL maps as a bit of a flex. Yeah, how is he going to perform in rounds against players that have been playing this game, every day? But
I don't know about
Vinky would be 4th in this one, sadly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jorday, I don't know what you think, but like Leo has impressed me. Like we were in the same seeding server with Leo, and he was fast. Like, I mean, he was easily the best player in that server. And that doesn't mean too much considering, the servers were randomized. So you could have had all the best players in one and, the rest in another. But I don't know. I just feel like Leo has kind of that experience, not just like this game, but looking back just in general, that competitive experience. And it helps that he's fast. So for me, he probably does that to take that second place. And I'd agree then with the 3rd and 4th, with Roy probably taking 3rd and Dvinho in 4th.
I think it's very for Leo, very map dependent, and it's not to say that he's not good on all the maps, but I'd say he's good on 3 of them, and then he's extremely good on Hoga, which is a bit more tech focused. I remember in the seeding server with me and Babz, he was I think he put like a 0.1 down, a couple 0.2s, and a 0.3 on Hoga, and to do that in rounds is absolutely insane. So I think if he gets more rounds on Hoga in that match, then I could definitely see him coming second on that. But it's very map dependent, I feel like.
Yep. Like that seems like a Fair taken. It has been interesting as well seeing some of the maps, and there are definitely some players who on some of the maps are significantly better than their seeding would suggest, or in some places you have players who've done very, very well in their seeding as a combination of the time attack and the rounds. There's particular maps that they're then struggling on quite a lot, which is always fun as well. And, you know, actually seeing them in those matches then actually struggle on them a little bit does potentially lead to an outcome. But I think that's match 2. That makes a lot of sense to me. Moving on to match 3, Crows, Hendo. Oh, look, it's Chris and Liffy.
Yeah, I think it'd take this moment to say good morning to Crows, who's probably having his breakfast right now, getting out of bed. But I actually thought, the Welshman from Wumbo is a good nickname for Crows. That's just a side point.
Yeah, that's not a nickname. That's
just a title.
Fact.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds catchy.
Yeah.
It's actually it's mad to see the rise that Crows has had, and actually, Hendo is in this with him. So it's like arguably Wales' two best players in the same match. Yeah. And personally, I've seen Hendo's growth in the last few months has been exponential. It's really cool.
Hendo's an interesting one, and similar to Vinky, who we mentioned in the previous match. Like, Vinky has the pace to compete for second in that previous match with Leo and Royboy, but we haven't seen a rounds performance from him, like a solid rounds performance from him yet, really. Which is kind of the same for Hendo, I think. Hendo has the pace. Hendo can get within tenths of world records, can get world records on these kind of maps, but we've yet to see a rounds performance from him in any tournament. I would love him. I would love either of these players to, prove me wrong and come in and absolutely destroy me. But we're yet to see it, so that's why there's question marks over them, I think. But looking at the seeding event data here, it's kind of scary.
How are you feeling about frame shift, Chris?
I shouldn't DNF is, I think, my lesson from the seeding event.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, we will be doing the draw for map order as well on the show here. That's correct, right? I'm not making
for the
that
grand
up.
final. Yeah, all the other ones have already been done.
For the grand final. Okay, where's frame shift for the next round?
Frame shift for the next round is
it map? Oh, it's
the
map
last
4. Chris,
map 4.
You're gonna be fine.
You're gonna win.
You are sorted. You can knock someone out before you even get to frame shift, Chris.
We will find out. I don't have that sort of confidence, especially considering I've not opened the game since the round of 32 match on Saturday. So.
So how are we feeling then about this? Obviously, look, we're praising a lot of players. Chris has decided that he's in fourth and Crows is in first. And hey, listen, all right, we can argue it if we want to. Hendo and Liffy then in the middle. Where are we landing?
That's tough, man.
Honestly, I think second place is up for grabs from anyone. I think a Crows is definitely going to get first, though. I mean, look at his rounds performance in things like the TMFL series and stuff. Like, he's so consistent. It's just ridiculous and scary. I think, as Chris said, I think Hendo, we're yet to really see it. I honestly, as much as it pains me to say it, I kind of give Chris a slight edge on getting second as a bit of a surprise.
I do notice the issue, which is that we've let Chris drive the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
that is definitely a problem.
Who let him cook? It's a tough one to call, because for me, I agree that a Crows gets first. I mean, there is a context where maybe a Crows has a bit of a wobble, and then it leaves a gap open for somebody like Hendo to have a good match and maybe sneak at first place. But I think the safe bet is a Crows in first. And then I feel like Hendo's probably the favorite for second, but it comes down to on the day who performs kind of thing. And Liffy is a player that I know really well, and he's just super consistent. He might lack a slight bit of pace compared to a Crows and Hendo, but his consistency is really, really impressive. And that's kind of the thing that can put pressure on players in these situations you mentioned. living up to the bigger situations now going into these rounds. And yeah, I'd go with the order that Chris has put on screen. So Crows first, Hendo second, Liffey third, and Chris fourth.
Yeah, to be fair, one thing I will say is that Chris does tilt easy. If he gets behind on those maps that are in his favour, oof.
Chris 10
The
years ago
rage will
tilted
be-
very easily. Now I just
Chris 10 years ago destroyed desks. That's what Chris 10 years ago did.
not wrong.
I want to see it again.
Yeah.
Honestly, we used to go to these LAN events, right? And I'd be sitting next to him playing in the tournament. And I'd just hear this massive bang, and it's Chris smashing his controller on the desk because he hit a corner. And then he just says, "For fuck's sake," under his breath every time. It's always like whispered, so that only I get to hear it and be distracted. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but the bang, yeah, most of the LAN event heard that. Sorry, bit of a side note. But.
That's the kind of investment we need to see back. You know, that's how players need to be coming in. That's what's on the line. Yeah.
That's what's needed for a second place performance, I think.
A little bit of aggression. Okay.
Yeah. Noted.
Well, yeah, that is the order that we have now anyway for this match. But I think definitely we're saying so far that this feels like the match may be most up for grabs out of the three that we've looked at. Would that be fair to say?
I thought you were going to say out of the four. I agree with that.
Yeah, and possibly also out of the four then, because moving down to map 4, 100%, Jorday is going to win. Unfortunate for Epos, Jaffa, and Crispy. They're just not quite bringing the quality this year, I think, is really what the narrative has been around these three players.
Oh, man.
Who wants to disagree first?
Someone else talk. I don't want to talk about this one.
No, I was going to say this fourth match for me is the one that's the most like up in the air kind of thing. I think Epos.
Crisp on polls.
I mean,
what happened there? Does anyone know what happened there?
Chris type one in chat.
Sandbagging.
Yeah, just sandbagging. Yeah, but it's one of those matches. I mean, I think like most of the matches, the seed one is likely the favorite to come out of it. There aren't too many surprises with that. I mean, I'd love to see some surprises, but yeah, the safe bet is probably Epos in first. But for me, that second place is anyone's game. I mean, I don't know if Jaffa was watching, but I wasn't too convinced by his like performance in that first game in the bracket. I think he probably said it himself that it wasn't his best performance. We mentioned like N7 was challenging him, and I feel like that's two different calibers of players. And Jaffa's been really good in TA. But yeah, I don't know. It's factoring in. So we've had like a week since the first round, and then until the main event, it's like I feel like a lot is going to change. There's going to be a lot of surprises where players like overperform and some players underperform, and I just can't predict this second, third, and fourth place.
I would disagree. I think Jaffa's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger in quite a relatively small amount of time. Crisp self-admittedly does not enjoy rounds, and I think entered the tournament because Boz kept telling him to every evening.
Good old peer pressure
during bingo. I think Chris definitely has the pace, the same as kind of Hendo and Vinky definitely has the pace, but it's a massive question mark in rounds. I don't think I've ever seen him in rounds. So for me, Epos first, Jaffa second, and then sorry, Jorday, I don't. you and Chris fighting for third, I would say.
No, I think
I agree with that.
Shockingly easy round that, or a shockingly easy match. I think it sounds we're all pretty happy with how we feel about that one, and I appreciate it, Chris, putting Jorday in because he's here to get angry at you if you don't in third place. That's very intelligent.
Actually,
good
if you put me
decision-making.
fourth, if I underperform, it then doesn't matter. Right? So that'd be a lot better
good
for
focus.
me.
And it makes our prediction bracket symmetrical. Our first match was
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4 in order as well, right? And then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 3, 1, 2, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we get to the lower bracket, and that means that, listen, I know how to pattern recognize. I did project maths for my leaving cert. It's got to be a 1, 2, 3, 4 again, right? That just...
This repeats.
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. It's just the same in the lower bracket.
Okay.
That,
Nice.
This would be so much
That's
easier.
simple. We'll just get
Just
through
zoom through this.
this
Yeah.
much quicker.
1, 2, 4, 3. Yeah. I'm glad. Okay, let's fill it in and then argue about it, okay?
Great.
So the first one then, we're saying it'll end up being Gibbonster, Divinio, Sox and Idolus. Sox and Idolus, the two players who are actually locked in there at the moment, and we're waiting to see what happens in the upper bracket before we actually see who does drop down to this one. Would Gibbonster and Divinio match up in that order? Would Sox and Idolus really have no chance against the two players dropping down from the upper bracket?
I think that's a great match. I think that's a really
really
interesting
good match as well. Yeah, I think anyone could take that.
I think if Idol finds pace finds more pace, between week 1 and then the main event, he's a real menace in rounds.
I think I mean it's probably pretty obvious now that I'm a big Gibbo fan. But I'd still have Gibbo number 1 on that. I think again, Vinky in rounds is yet to perform, and to me, Gibbo in rounds is exceptional, and obviously rounds matters now. So I think that's enough for me to say Gibbo is going to be number 1 in that. For second, I mean, I think Vinky should get second on that, just based off pace alone.
My feeling again here is that Idol's got the most experience of matches out of this group. I think that might come into play. To be honest, I really do. I think that may well come into play. I'm not saying that all of them are necessarily gonna, go on tilt, but I'd be surprised if none of them do. In such a tight match, like I just feel like someone's gonna lose the kind of mental game here.
Yeah, it's like all 4 of these players probably looking at, like, if this was the match, they'd be looking at it saying, "I've got a chance here." Yeah, and, like, that's a cool thing to think about.
I think Idol's rounds performance is pretty strong. I would say Vinky wins this fairly easily, personally. The seeding results was quite surprising, actually, because I would say Vinky wins this quite convincingly. And then it's a fight for second between Idol and Gibbonster. Maybe I just don't know enough about Sox, but that's how I would call it.
Yeah, Sox is under the radar, right? I don't. Again, in time attack, I think his times are pretty insane, but I don't know anything more about the guy. I don't know if he played in previous tournaments that anyone might know about, but yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to judge. I can only judge on Idol and Vinky, and to be fair, thinking about it, I could see, as Jay mentioned, the experience with Idol. I could genuinely see that playing a huge part in this.
Yeah, I think just because we need some controversy, I'd agree with Jorday and put Gibbo in first. And
we're really trying to make Vinky mad today.
No, I reckon Vinky is going to get better as the day goes on, as the weekend goes on. But I don't know, man. It's tight. But yeah.
I don't
Somebody
know.
back me up here.
1, 2, 4, 3 again. I think we gotta put Idol up there a bit higher.
Idol's first match was made to look, or at least his lower bracket match that we got on stream was made to look worse than it was by the fact that Comrade Louis just went on an absolute tear for the first half of that match. Like, absolutely just drove incredibly consistently and well. It meant everyone else in that match had a hard time looking good for a long time. So I don't know. I'm saying that as maybe, yeah, Idol could potentially be higher if he's not in a match where someone is just peaking for the first half.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's like if Idol, I feel like because Idol was competing against players of the caliber of Louis, I think if he wants to get through that match there, he needs to kind of raise it up one more level to kind of get a bit more pace. And I know I don't think he has too much time to be practicing this week. So I don't know. I'd put him in that third place. I think I'd agree with the standings there on screen.
Okay.
Fair. As long as we're happy there, and I think the 1-2 controversy has been resolved because we realized it would make Vinky a little bit madder to put him in second place. So moving on to the next match then, we do figure out with Roy and N7 both dropping into the same match in the lower bracket, and then Louis and Nioruko looking to take them down. I mean, that's a spicy lower bracket match, to be honest.
Yeah, lower bracket looking to give the entertainment this weekend. Man, it's such a tight one again.
The seeding is surprising to me again. I would say Royboy and Louis have this handily. N7's improved so much since BIPR.
I've been
I think
practicing.
N7
Sorry.
is the wild card of the whole tournament, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like he could get through the match before this and not even drop down into this.
Yep.
Like there's a genuine chance of that, I think. And there's again
the longer
there's
the
a chance he
tournament
can win
goes,
it.
and the longer he manages to stay in the tournament, the
Yeah.
more like it's weird. It's in that match above and in this match, I'd maybe say like, yeah, N7 drops out, possibly here. But if he makes it into the next round, I'd probably be more likely to put him in the top 2 of that one than I feel like putting him in the top 2 of this one. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I was going to say the same as what you just typed, Chris.
That's rough,
no
buddy.
Rico and rounds. Yeah.
I mean, it depends what Naya will show up. It's like if Naya shows up, then Naya gets second probably easily. If Naya performs,
I feel like Naya only shows up by accident ever. Like not that he's like bad. That's not like a dick. That's just a like Naya just
said
like
it
rocks
now.
up and just plays, and what happens, and he just seems so like blasé about it. To be honest, I don't know. I don't
He's
know.
always happy.
Yeah, he doesn't. It's like he doesn't really feel like he needs to prove anything, and I don't think he cares as much as everyone else. I don't think he's going to be practicing as much. If he practiced and properly like committed and went for it, then he'd go through. I think, but I don't think he will.
What I thought was interesting was last week in his matches, he was driving really good pace. He was leading a lot of rounds and making, let's say silly errors where the wall's coming towards him and he doesn't release or adjust at all and just drives into the wall.
That's what he's like.
And
it's world record or bust.
Those walls will get you, man. They come out of nowhere.
I think he has the pace. He just needs to relax a little bit in rounds. But after the tournament on Saturday, he said, "Don't worry, I'm going to practice to be even quicker next week." You don't need to practice to be quicker. You need to practice to be slightly slower.
Yeah.
Add fuel to the fire.
Oh my god.
I think to summarize, I think, well, I'd say Roy gets through this. I feel so bad saying this, but I feel like N7 maybe gets second because I've been practicing with Louis this week, and we've both been surprised at how well we've been able to drive. And Louis is probably not going to want to practice with me anymore.
That's the meanest possible way to put it. It's like, look, I've been practicing with him, and I don't rate it.
Yeah,
Sorry, we're managing to we're mirroring our pattern in the upper bracket, but reversed for the lower bracket, which means then this match is a 1, 2, 3, 4. Jorday, good news! You're going through.
Let's go. That's what I like to see. Yes, finally, some winning, please. Man. Oh man, I didn't realize how close it was between me and Liffy in wait, is that seeding this spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
11th, 12th.
So it's not Coops who's going to be in that spot anymore. It's going to be Vig. Yeah. Oh, which makes one spot of difference, basically.
In the match I played with Vic, I would say he did look very, very untrained. Like he's obviously a very good player, and I didn't feel like we got the Vic that I'm used to seeing in Cuppa The Day. Whether he's changed it up for this week, I don't know. But Charge JT on the other hand, I think he's again a bit underrated, really, and it's very obvious that he puts in the time, and he actually is very enthusiastic about doing well in these matches. Yeah, I don't know, between me and Liffy, well, that is really close, isn't it? I can't have a say in this. You guys talk.
I think
I hope
for the
I'm not
purposes
playing.
of moving people through the bracket, I think it's fairly simple. Personally,
it does feel like it's a Liffey Jorday. And I'm going to stick to my pronunciation of that. Liffey and Jorday should be
I quite like that.
moving forward.
The two French players.
We've had enough of French Babz. We're Frenchifying everyone. This is a takeover.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Jorday isn't playing League of Legends, I think we're good.
I will not touch that game ever again. God, too much toxic people in that game. My God.
Yeah, I'd like to see a good focus one too.
Are you at all worried that Vig has had time to practice then and may up the pace significantly for this weekend?
I don't know, man. I think if he was that invested, he would have put the time in before, and maybe it's because of work or something. I don't know the guy at all, but I mean, I know that I've put the time in, and I know that Liffy's put the time in, and I'm confident in our ability to get the 1-2 on that if the match does occur. I think a week's practice on these maps that are extremely difficult, really, to learn. A week isn't enough. Nowhere
That's
near
fair.
enough, I don't think.
That's kind of something we were talking about mental earlier as well, and from the point of view of all of you who are playing in the competition as well, these maps do feel very, very punishing as maps if you do start to lose the mental bit, because they all have so many places where if you're kind of a little bit off, things can snowball out of control very quickly in a round and then in a match.
Yeah, so easy to kind of lose the mental, and once you do, it's like it kind of transcends through the next maps, because I mean, once again, the level is so high, everybody is performing. You're always going to have one or two players who are performing well in your match, and you have to make sure you are as well. I think going into this lower bracket match 4, I'm going to let you guys speak, and hopefully you're going to change what Chris is putting on screen. But,
No. So this match is Crisp, me, Babz, and Matt T, and I'm clearly going to win.
Actually.
Oh, Matt P.
Oh, yeah, Matt P now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had to go down the alphabet.
So I'm clearly going to win this one, and Babz is clearly going to come fourth. It's just who's going to come second between Crisp and Matt P.
Yeah, let's just skip that part of the discussion. It's not needed.
The best, if anything does go wrong, we can just have a show match next week as well, back on Cuppa The Day for the grudge match revenge. You know.
I will 1v1 Chris on Cuppa The Day if needed.
Excellent plan. I like looking at it. Look, seeding says it's Chris and Crisp, right? But Babz, then, like, look, it comes down to you, Babz. How are you feeling if this matchup ended up happening? Do you think you could beat Chris or Crisp when it came down to it?
I just had to weigh that up in my mind, because if I say no, then there's no pressure. But if I say yes, then there's pressure.
Not that you're going to, just could you?
I feel like yes. I feel like week 1 and seeding was not a fair representation of what I can actually do on these maps. I think the people I've been practicing with this week would agree with that, at least in pace wise. And I've been working on that consistency. And I'm treating this match as like I'm already in lower bracket. I've got 2 players coming down from winners bracket. All I need to do is beat one of them and at least get second. And that's my main goal for the whole event. Never mind, this match. So I'm treating it as a 1v1 and focusing on one player and just driving the best I can.
Like that. Look, that's a fair way to look at it. Anyway, is to just take the match as it comes, try and play it. I mean, this is obviously isn't guaranteed to be how it is. I think Crisp in particular, when we're looking at the upper bracket matches, is the one we're saying like that could fall a different way out of any of them. And then Matt P as the late addition coming in is also going to be interesting. He's had to fight a little bit harder maybe than some of the rest of you to get to this match in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched that quali match that they did. He finished in second behind Vig in that, and he has like the pace on the maps, and there's so many runs that just go adrift, that are thrown away in like the last few corners, which is such a pity, because if his consistency was there, he'd be terrifying. But we're Wednesday and those matches are on Saturday. Once again, it comes down to like, how does that performance evolve from now to then?
For sure. So weighing in on it then, I mean, where do people actually want to rate people in this? I mean, that's...
So I think, looking at this data, Crisp is out of position.
Yes.
9th, 6th, and 6th on 3 maps, and then I don't know, the Ethernet cable came out or something on polls. So I don't know what happened, but he's definitely out of position. He should be another 5, 6, 8 positions higher. So I would say Crisp is probably the favourite to win this one, and then it depends how Matt P plays. Matt P tilted a little bit, I think, on Saturday. Wasn't performing the way that he thought he could, and suffered because of that. So potentially he could be coming 4th in that match, and then it's between myself and Babz to fight for that 2nd place.
Let's just do it now.
Yeah,
Get onto the server.
Make it a best of 3 with 1v1 tonight. Do it again on Saturday, and then best of 3 on next Wednesday's Cuppa The Day.
Yeah, can we only play frame shift?
That doesn't seem fair. I'll say it. That doesn't seem fair.
I'm not gonna say who gets.
I feel like this is Jay and Jorday's arena to pass opinion.
I mean,
on.
I just remember this one time where Chris had this match against a guy called R2K. And yeah, he lost against an untrained, I think, even R2K.
Yeah, ESL Pro Series UK was wonderful memories for me.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay,
to be honest, this is a gamble, but I don't know. I actually think, honestly, I have no idea. It's a coin flip. Can we just write to 2.5 in both?
You've got the randomizer open already, Chris. I mean, at some point.
I think for me, there's a slight bias because I've trained with Babz the whole since the beginning, really, on the maps, and as he said, he knows he didn't perform the way he wanted to in the first half of BIPC, and seeing the times he's putting in now, I'm confident in his ability to come second in this one. I think as much as I love both Chris and Babz, I think for me, I think Babz gets second on this one.
I feel like the fact that you're training is an advantage over me already.
I was about to say, yeah, the fact that you said right at the start of the show that you've barely been playing the past week, yeah, that doesn't bode great.
Yeah. Well, I'm out in 17th to 20th from fifth last year. Good focus, British and Irish Trackmania. Let's move on to the next round.
They don't get any easier to
Yeah,
call.
you'd expect it to get easier.
I don't think.
Crisp, Gibbonster, N7, and Jorday all in a single match down in the losers bracket. Are we sticking with the losers bracket, or are we going to jump back up? I think stick with the losers bracket seems fair for the moment, and then we can head back up. Yeah.
It's funny because this match, from Jorday's perspective, for me looks easier than the previous match we had from, which is kind of interesting. Well, it's Crisp, Gibbo, and N7. I feel like, yeah, I don't know if Jorday shows what he did week 1, especially in seeding, where he was close to Leo and performance on a lot of maps. I think that's the first place for Jorday.
I think there's always the weird wild card of Crisp, though, because as we said just now, he's not in the correct seeding position. I don't know if he's necessarily as good in rounds, though. So
yeah, not mentioning the wild card of N7 and the wild card of Gibbo. It's
that's the thing in BIPL. I have flashbacks to Gibbo absolutely destroying me in BIPL, so I'm trying to forget that and just come into this with a clean slate. But yeah, I don't know. It's really close. As I say, Crisp is probably not where he should be, but then again, Crisp in rounds, so who knows, man.
I think this is the closest match that we've looked at so far, to be honest. I think anyone could come first or last in this, depending on how they play on the day.
But we have to be controversial and have to have predictions. I'm just gonna go straight. I'm just gonna say I think Jorday 1, Crisp 2, Gibbo 3rd, and unfortunately it ends for N7 4th. That's what I'm saying. You guys disagree if you want.
I could agree with that. I could.
Yeah.
But I do want to stick by my guns and say that I think N7 gets scarier the more matches he actually plays. Because winning is a habit, and when you actually start to get the experience of closing out a match, if he starts strong, he could be a contender there for the top 2 in that match.
Depends though, because pressure builds as well. Although this is still loser bracket, so
which is that is a scary place to be. That's what I'm putting that out there. I'm willing to be shouted down on it as well, but listen, if you let me get N7 through this match, I'm just going to be arguing higher the further we go, which I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing. At some point I do need to give up on it a little bit, probably.
I could get behind this order.
Yeah.
Potentially
I
with
think
Jorday and Chris swap depending on how Chris performs in rounds, but I could get behind this.
I think this is the most likely.
Okay. I think we're starting to kind of move through them a bit quicker, which is a good sign because we've been on this for a while now already.
Yeah. Right, the next losers bracket match: Liffey, Real Roy Boy, Babzify, and Divino. Davinci makes a lower bracket appearance, did make it through, we said, in the last round. Does he make it through this one as well? Babz, you gonna knock him out?
Stop
him down?
Stop coming to me for this. I already knocked Divino down one position on this previous prediction. I can't go again. And as well, I can't talk about this even more than my previous match, because instead of being against Chris, I'd be against Liffey, and Liffey and I are just, I don't know. This one is up to you guys because I can't.
I think the power of good focus is going to really come strong here, and it'll be a Babz and Liffey 1 and 2.
The bias is insane.
Bias.
So I feel like I just haven't seen performances from a lot of people in the last 6 months, so I'm a little kind of starved for information, if that makes sense. Because looking at this match, I would instinctively go Royboy wins, and Vinky's a close second. Babz probably third, and Liffey sadly in fourth. But that's really not what the order says. Liffey's improved massively in the last 6 months, it seems, and I'm clueless.
I think the scary thing is Liffey's consistency and his positioning on those maps as well. Like he's good all round. I think the map order may come into play here as well, to be honest.
Yep.
And Liffey's just a consistent player. But then, I mean, I put Royboy as beating. I still think Royboy's first, to be honest. He's got so much experience, and also I don't know what's going on with his time there in the seedings on Frameshift, but I think that's kind of underselling him a bit as well.
Yeah, like if we're talking about Crisp maybe being underseeded as a result, I think similar thing for Roy. You could probably say he should be in air quotes above Liffey in the seeding, and they're right beside each other, and he's got a 23rd for seeding on Frameshift, which is very out of line with his other maps.
Wasn't Roy playing on BITM's PC, or was that a meme?
He was. No, he actually was. BITM tweeted out. So I believe Roy and BITM are friends IRL. And they're both part of Molotov, and I think Roy was playing on BITM's PC for that first weekend, which is always a little bit of a kind of a spanner in the works.
Yep, absolutely. I think so. We've ended up with Roy in first. Like Babz, you're just avoiding having to say that you'd knock Liffey out. You don't want to say it
in game, obviously.
Well, it's on site. Is all I'm saying.
Yes, in game.
That's the real reason there's not been a proper big Irish meetup yet, right? It's just because too many people will be settling grudges.
No, I'd be fine. I'd be fine having Liffey finish second in that match. And I'm sorry.
I see the video.
Just put me last, man. Put me out of my misery, and I'm good.
Send me home. All right. Who wants to make the argument for Divino? Anyone want to argue Divino into second place in this match?
I would argue Vinky. Purely because I know he's got the pace, and I know that the Wombo guys train together. Or maybe I'm clueless, but it seems like they train together and they share lines and screen share and all that kind of good stuff. So I would say that Vinky's got good support there in terms of rounds pace and training.
I think for me, Liffey's just on a massive high right now, and he's just stomping his way through the bracket. I can't see him losing to Vinky in my head. Like, he is really performing extremely well in this tournament so far, and I think I can see him riding that out. Like, he didn't come across to me as the type of player to have high highs and low lows, really. And yeah, for me, I think Liffey's second.
Okay. I mean, I will say as well, it'd be very sad to have all of the Irish players out by loser bracket round 3. So, I mean, keep Liffey in there just for the sake of it. And as you say, also he's playing incredibly well at the moment. Yeah. Does anyone want to actually just commit, make a final call? I mean, Chris is driving the spreadsheet here, but
I'm just enjoying the chat at the moment. I think he's spamming. This is fine.
I mean, all you got to remember is that this is just an opinion. It is also a legally binding spreadsheet. This is how things will play out. If you're winning, you got to throw if you're scheduled to get knocked out. That's how it works. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules.
I mean, if we look back at this prediction after it happens, and if we get everything right, I mean,
we get anything right.
We will be hailed as kings of predictions.
I'm feeling pretty comfortable that our Babz winning his match prediction is right. I don't know about you guys. That's that one I'm feeling comfortable in.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I do kind of agree with Chris. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the pressure is more likely to get to someone like Liffey than it is to Vinky. Like, and I think honestly, I think the biggest thing is that I think he's just got pace that's like not really been shown yet.
Okay. You listen, it's the argument's been won. Vinky going on in second place from this match, at least in the predictions. And we'll head back up to the upper bracket and have a look at what's going on up there. Because speaking of Babz, here he is taking on Epos Leo and new Hendo in an upper bracket match.
I think this
actually
might be a clear 1-2.
Yeah.
Is it just me?
The only hesitation I have is between. Actually, no, man, that's going to be such a good game. But I was going to say Babz first. I'd say probably Hendo fourth, just because that lineup is kind of like a massive test for Hendo. And maybe on like the first time of asking, it might not be enough, but like I can see him in the future winning those games, or at least contending for that first place. But I'd say the only argument is between Leo and Epos. But just considering the amount of effort and like the motivation that Epos has for this, I'd say it's Epos second, Leo third.
Banged out, easy, straightforward. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just easy enough on that one. I think, look, arguing Babz is going to lose a match until maybe the grand finals is going to be tough. So we'll move on to the other winners bracket semi-final. Wizzy, Akros, Rue, and Jaffa Padawan.
There's going to be a Scottish riot. What have we done?
Sure, look, it'll probably be fine as long as we don't predict both of them getting knocked out.
Right?
Uh-huh.
I knew that was coming.
Does anyone have an argument to be made here for Rue and Jaffa in the top 2 in this match?
I don't.
Maybe Jaffa, maybe.
Yeah, I think Jaffa's got an outside shot at taking a Crows, maybe.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think it'd be very tough for him to compete with Akros on that. I mean, Akros is one of the kings of consistency, right?
Yeah.
I can't really see him ever dropping off. Jaffa will essentially have to try and beat him on pace, and I think that's going to involve a bit of crashing.
Akros switched after BIPL. He switched to Cam 2.
Ooh.
And I'm hearing that his pace has improved. So he's still got the consistency, but the pace has improved by switching to the superior camera.
Well,
I don't know about that.
It sounds a little bit like if Jaffa has not adopted Niroku as a training partner, kind of needs to, right? Just get a little bit of that play style into you. Just full risk everything you do. Maybe it works for that match. Yeah, and it's going to come down to that a bit, I think. Like, we're talking about matches now where it's going to be hard for some of the players who are coming in seated lower to take the fight to some of the players at the top who are very fast and very consistent. So switching up a play style, is it going to work? I mean, there's an argument to be made for the consistency and just trying to place as highly as possible for these guys as well. And just like, even if you're dropping lower, just don't mix things up and hope for the best in lower bracket, right?
Yeah, I think it's probably Wizzy and Akros 1-2, and then Rue and Jaffa who fight it out for third and fourth.
Yeah, seems fair.
That's all to be said.
And we're starting to see the same names a lot more often now as we move back down into the lower bracket, because here is Jaffa again, and this would be a match with Hendo and Jorday and Da Vinci again.
Oh, this one's interesting. I think
I
I'd
think
see
Hendo wins this
Hendo
one.
first.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah. I think
Hendo
I'd have
first.
Hendo first, Jaffa second,
Jaffa
Vinky
second, yeah.
third, me fourth. I think that's.
I'd agree with that. I'd go
I
with
think
that.
so as well.
Like that?
Oh,
Quick, easy.
go on, Nua,
Yeah.
disagree.
I mean, like, look, we've obviously been messaging here the entire time in the Discord server and, you know, agreeing to put Vinky through out of pity so he wouldn't feel bad here in Twitch chat. Like, is it a bit early to be putting him out? You know, this might still, you know, hurt the feelings a little bit. No, I think that's actually fair enough. I think that's a reasonable order. Hendo and Jaffa there after only just dropping down from the upper bracket. Look, something that we have not actually talked about yet at all is the mentality. Like, some players are going to be losing upper bracket matches and then having to play lower bracket matches relatively quickly after it. So for like Jaffa and Hendo, they are coming straight down from the upper bracket on this one. Like, I don't know how much it's going to affect some players, but for some players, that is going to be a rough way to jump back into things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it can have two effects, because you can have a really hard upper bracket match where you can perform well and then you just miss out by a bit, and then you can look at your next match and you're like, okay, like I've just performed to that level. If I just reproduce that or something close to that, I should be fine in this. And often that's kind of a calming kind of thing as well, because you're going to have breaks between matches where, like, maybe at some point the winner's bracket plays and then there's like 2 lower bracket matches to be played before you play next, and it's like that break can cause more harm than actually just going straight from one match to the next. So I don't know, it can go either way.
I just want to set the stage now and say, like, if we do see someone drop straight from upper bracket and out, I'm not going to be shocked necessarily, because it's a hard mental reset to go from like losing to finding winning mentality again.
Yeah, and I think you've also got a problem if you're coming from the lower bracket to the next lower bracket match. You're like, okay, I've got all that adrenaline up of I've just won this match, I've just got through to the next round, and then you look at the opponents that you have just dropped down that you've now got to play. You go into that match and like, oh, I've got to play Jaffa and Hendo. Oh no. I've got to repeat that, but even better. Like, that's a big stressor.
Just don't look at the bracket and HUD off when you join the lobby, screen covered to prevent knowing who you're playing against, and just find a way. And that's the strat, Jorday. Anyway, if you do end up in this position, no idea, could be anyone, honestly.
Yeah, I think for me, if I was to drop from an upper bracket into a lower bracket, that would essentially give me like a push to want to do better, right? Like I don't come out of a losing match thinking, oh, like you know, down in the dumps and not wanting to improve on it. It give me that extra push to want to do better. And I think for Hendo at least, that'd be exactly the same. He's a very driven player, in my opinion. So if that match was to occur, I think I'd see the best of Hendo, and that would scare the shit out of me, really. But yeah, I think it's a lot scarier being in the low bracket and seeing these upper bracket players come down, because then you're like, oh shit, I've got to play these guys now, as opposed to the upper bracket player coming down and being upset about the loss or something like that.
I mean, that's going to make it tough for Hendo, though, because I don't know if you guys know this. It is the card that's meant to be driven, not the player. Moving on to the other match here in the lower bracket semi-final. Leo, Rue, Roy, and Crisp. And this is pretty close to some of the early round upper bracket matches, I think, in terms of what was going on. Like, this would be Leo and Roy meeting again in the bracket. It's Crisp and... No, it's not Crisp meeting Leo or Roy again, or Rue. But yeah, I mean, like, this does feel like an upper quarter final to me.
For me, it's Leo, Rue, Roy, Crispy in that order.
And
I know you're going to disagree and say Roy ahead of Rue, but for me, I just see it in that way.
Maybe I wouldn't. I feel like Roy's got the tournament experience and the rounds experience, and under pressure, being on stream like to thousands of people, like playing against spam at the LAN recently. I think that plays a part. I don't think Rue typically enters a lot of rounds-based tournaments, so you've got that factor coming into it. But I think it is between those two for the second place. I think Leo kind of nailed on for first there if he can reach his potential.
I think I keep basing my choice on like Roy's performance this week, and considering he wasn't on the PC that he's used to, I mean, I don't know if he'll be on his own PC this time or not, but actually, I think I would, thinking about it, I'd have Royboy second, based on what you were saying, like his performance at Galax, and the fact that I mentioned it last week, he's completely stepped up his level recently. I think I would have him second over Rue, really.
I think the experience, the same as Chris, I think that the experience that Royboy's got is just that bit more. And I think he's a bit more consistent as well, I think. Like from what I've seen of both the players, I think he's more consistent.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
So we've ended up with Leo in first, Royboy in second, and then Rue and Chris have eliminated top 12. And that brings us on to the final day of the tournament, the final 4 matches. So every single one of these matches
main event
will be played in sequence separately. So we'll see all 4 of them.
On the Sunday.
Yep.
Big
so
day.
The first one we'll start with is 2 o'clock on the Sunday. Babz, the Crows, Wizzy, and Epos.
I think it's nice to note as well here that Nua, you're going to be, the voice of these matches alongside the big man Hotswat. So
yep.
That's a little bit of a leak for everyone there that your casters on the final day are going to be
We'll definitely keep it PG. I'm sure it'll go really well.
Oh, yeah.
This channel will not be demonetized at the end of the day. Where?
Man, it's just going to be great match after great match.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And I mean, what a way to kick it off. Babz, the Crows, Wizzy, and Epos is going to be...
Like, what's that standing in BIPL? That's like Babz first, was it Wizzy third, Epos second, the Crows fourth or something?
Yep.
Is that top 4 of BIPL? Yeah,
it is.
Look, before we even try and argue for this order, because I think maybe it's going to end up in the order that you've just said there as well, Babz, does anyone see the grand final not being a repeat of this winners bracket final?
No, I think the top 4 there is like there's a bit of a gap between that top 4 and then the rest of the players in the tournament.
I agree.
But I think it's though I do think it depends on Hendo and Leo's performance because they are capable, like on a one-off on something, they are capable of beating one of these players. And don't forget, this is last day. This is the big pressure. This is this is what people have been training for the last like 3 weeks. Then at this point. It's what it all comes down to. So yeah,
I think pace-wise, they can compete, but in rounds, I don't know, man. I think all 4 of these players in rounds are just they're robots, right? They are absolutely insane.
Not literally, by the way. There's no cheating.
No, sorry, yes, human. They're all humans. Yeah,
human robots.
That's just an android, and that's we're also making it sound significantly more suspicious than it was before this came up. So let's get to actually maybe ranking the order on these. Yeah. Do we want to start at the bottom? Who's coming fourth in this match then?
The Crows.
The Crows.
The Crows. Third.
Crows.
Epos.
Second.
Okay.
Wizzy.
Or are we going to argue third a little bit more?
Man.
I don't know, man. I think Wizzy's a lot more comfortable on these maps compared to the BIPL maps. I know that's what we're comparing it to, right? I think for me, like I would have Wizzy second here rather than Epos second.
I think Wizzy has been practicing more for this than he did for. I think BIPL, but his practice for that was quite casual. It was mostly on stream. I don't think he was as prepared for that as he would have liked to have been. But this time around, he seems pretty strong. So
yeah, it might seem odd to say. Might seem odd to say considering the caliber of player that Wizzy is, but I feel like he has something to prove in the IPC. And we might see a Wizzy come out in this final because I think actually he's been playing like offline, has he? I think going into this last weekend. But I can see Wizzy like competing for that overall win. So I put him second in this match.
Okay, and that's, I mean, look, we've talked about Babz at the top. I think it hasn't even been a conversation before this match. We've just kind of slammed him first in whatever match he was in. Is it still, it's not still that comfortable by the time it reaches this match, right?
It's not comfortable.
No.
By any means. Well, it's never comfortable when you're playing against a Crows, Wizzy, and Epos. But yeah.
I just think Babz has given us no reason to believe that he wouldn't be first. That's the thing, right? Like he just has been
apart
number
from
one
playing GeoGuessr all night every
apart from that
every day.
that could be an issue. But like, I don't know, Babz he's just number one. I feel like he's just giving us no reason to think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that seems fair, and we'll probably revisit this then one more time for the grand finals. But that does mean looking down at the loser bracket final: Hendo, Jaffa, Leo, and Roy. At the top of the tournament, I think we were talking a lot about how there does seem to be a strong top 8, with the top 4 looking clear, and I think we've basically ended up with that with our predictions here as well. These 4 all very strong players, maybe just outside the level of that top 4 in the winners bracket final. But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to ranking this losers bracket final, same thing. Let's start at the bottom. Who's coming fourth in this match?
Roy.
I would say
Don't back me up, guys. Like, he's fine.
No.
I was going to say Jaffa.
Leo fourth?
Everyone's stunned.
Leo fourth.
Whoa, no, that's controversial.
I think just some maps, like Leo
maybe.
is a lot more comfortable on Hoga compared to the rest. Not to say that, again, I've mentioned this earlier, not to say that he's bad on the other ones. He's good on the others and great on Hoga. Where I feel like the other 3 are just on a level above on those other 3 maps, and it will play a huge part in that match.
But I still wouldn't.
Yeah,
I know it
that's
was
a good
on a
point.
different PC, but I still wouldn't put Roy ahead.
I think there's 2 standout results from the seeding here.
Hmm.
Hendo on poles in 15th, and Leo on frameshift in 12th. If those are kind of bogey maps for those players, and they can train that out this week, then it becomes
What is the
much closer.
order for this specific match?
This specific match would be poles, frameshift, Hoga, Candy Crush.
Poles.
That's an interesting order. So polls the T.
Any polls enjoyers? Type 1? Type 1?
Yeah, any players that we just explicitly said maybe don't enjoy polls looking at the seeding event? That could be interesting then, shall we say, for Hendo in this match, having to play a lot of polls. And like you say, maybe he's trained it out this week, but this would be a match that's absolutely going to test whether or not he has trained up on this match.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it for the upper bracket match that, like, in a final, the 2 players that I could see competing would be Hendo and Leo, and I'd stick with those 2 to go through in this match with Leo in first. And then for me, it would just be Roy, who's slightly behind Jaffa in 4th.
So poles being the potential decider map for second doesn't come into it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I was thinking that Hendo's got an outside chance of like properly setting himself apart from the bottom 2 on this until I saw polls first.
But stats isn't everything, though.
No. Stats is everything. I'm sorry. I think you misunderstand.
This spreadsheet is very serious.
Like, I hate to say it, but I'd love to go and like actually look at how closely we've just ranked players purely to their seeding. In a lot of we've definitely swapped it up a bit, but it's there. It's going to make it much more interesting for that second spot, I think, in general on this one, is what it boils down to, right? And I also think, like, Candy Crush and Hoga, a lot of people have kind of talked about being 2 of the harder maps in the pack. Or not harder maps, they're all hard maps, but the fact that those come at a really critical point of this match, as players are starting to approach last chance. Candy Crush especially is, I think, where we're going to see your match made or broken, and polls is just going to put someone out of their misery potentially. It could come down to how comfortable Hendo is on that, and that needs to be where he shows up, even if it's polls being very, very... Even if polls has more rounds on it, I think Hoga and Candy Crush combined are probably going to have more of an impact on the match.
I'm going to put my neck out and say Hendo takes second here.
I'd agree with that.
Roy Boy's in 4th, though. Not with that map order.
Okay.
My orders would be completely different to that, I think.
Oh, no. And yeah, I'm also still questioning Hendo getting second as well, to be honest.
Oh, no.
To be honest,
this is the hardest match of all of them.
I'm also questioning Leo getting first, potentially.
Just end it here.
Well, I think the point was made earlier about Leo's being more strong on the tech, but at the end of the day, tech is not necessarily going to carry you through on these maps necessarily. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm 100% in that boat because these maps are less tech heavy than the previous ones anyway, in BIPO and BIPC1. I just think that'll play a huge part for Leo. I mean, Roy in fourth is definitely not where I had him. I had Roy second in my head.
Oh man.
So God knows where we're going to end up with this.
All right. Okay. So I think Nua, me, and Chris agreed that Leo gets first. Is that
Sure.
right?
But listen, you can use my name to add weight to what you're arguing. Absolutely.
We just have to find a way to get through this match and move on.
Yeah. Because look, we're all going to agree that this consolidation final goes poorly for the two players who make it out of this match, right? Yeah, I'm not hearing any arguments.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, like, look, we can all agree. What if we just for now put everyone first in this match, in the lower bracket final, and we just say, actually, whatever.
They don't make it through the next one.
Yeah. Like, because I like, there are genuinely good arguments to be had for pretty much all of the players then in that lower bracket final, is what it boils down to.
Agreed.
So yeah. Epos and Necros, I don't know, mix it up, opposite order from how they were in the winners bracket final. It's a massive comeback and
let's
really
say
impressive.
they dealt with the loss differently and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Necros really steps up, driven, motivated coming into that consolidation final, managing a huge win over Epos. Actually, really impressive. Didn't drop a map the entire way through, and then get to the grand final. And look, we're saying it's a replay. There's a top 4 coming into this tournament. They're going to rematch in the grand final. Babz as the player to beat. And there's going to be a map order of some kind as well. You'd have to imagine that at some point we will play all 4 maps during this grand final.
Yeah. I don't know how to enter this anymore. It's just
hit the button. Let's do it. Let's see what we're doing. The order is Frameshift, Poles, Candy Crush, and Hoga. I think Frameshift is a really interesting one to have first because it is probably the map that has been complained about the least. At least
a fairly forgiving order, really.
Yeah,
as orders go. I think that's quite nice.
Yeah, Frameshift has been given a lot of praise in the map pack. I've heard multiple people just praising it, and especially Oze is the mapper. A lot of people hadn't heard of him before this event, but yeah, props to him for a great map.
Yep. That's going to be fun. Polls, again, it's Candy Crush and Hoga, 3rd and 4th at a point. Like 3rd and 4th map, to me, do still feel like they're a really critical turning point in this format because that is when players start to... That's when the pressure really starts to be applied. By the time you hit the turnaround onto the final map, the match can be decided. We've seen that a lot. That, even if there are 2 players or 3 players left in, 1 player is a long way up. Epos on Frameshift, though. Does that shake up anyone's opinion of how things go?
In seeding, I would say.
In seeding, correct.
I feel like Boss is pretty confident. If chat is anything to judge based on, everyone seems to be moulding that Boss has won the tournament.
What happened to Epos on Candy Crush?
A skill issue, I guess.
Yeah.
Epos on mine.
I don't know. I'm just full chatting mode at this point. That's
Yeah, and to answer Liffy's question, I think the points limit is higher in the grand final. And I can't remember if we said, Chris, but is it higher in the previous matches as well?
I have no idea, I'll be honest.
Nice. We'll confirm that at a later date. Anyway.
I'm sure it's in the rule book somewhere. Probably it's not. I've looked already. But is anyone going to argue a different order from the winners bracket final for the rematch?
I can see Boss coming second.
I don't think we should predict this one.
Wow, leave it up.
This is a whole point of exercise.
I think you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what a prediction segment is for.
I don't know. I guess, but yeah.
Just declare it a draw.
We've just
There
been
you
through
go,
so
everyone.
much to get here. It's the journey that means more than the actual result. So I think we should all accept it's just.
You just got to the final part of a prediction segment, and we were like, nah.
I am interested to see if Chris is thinking similar to me, though, in terms of this final. Like, if you think Boz is coming second, who do you think is coming first? Wizzy?
No, I said I think I can see EPOS coming second.
So you're saying Boz is coming third?
No. No, I'm saying I think the order could potentially be the same as BIPL. I know Wizzy, I think he is training much harder for this one, but EPOS is very strong.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, just to touch back on that lower bracket semi-final, because we haven't talked about it enough. Oh, man, it's just no. We've got 4 amazing players in this particular final. I feel like it comes down to exactly. It comes down to like Jorday said, Babz hasn't given us a reason to say that he wouldn't win this. He wouldn't be first. And this is what Babz does. Like Babz cares about this a lot, as do all of the players in this final. But I feel like Babz probably takes that. I personally would like to see Wizzy. Man, in second, but I don't know EPOS as well. Man.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
It's worth just to throw a little bit extra into the mix in that conversation for second place. For the winners bracket final, they're all coming in the same boat. First match of the day, 2:00. For the grand final, Wizzy and EPOS are coming in different. Wizzy will have been sitting there waiting for a couple of hours essentially. And EPOS would be coming back in off the back of that consolidation final. So Wizzy will have been having to stay warm, probably practicing the maps. EPOS is coming off the back of focus and rounds. Maybe that mixes things up a little bit. Maybe that is the kind of spanner in the works that changes how things went in the winner bracket final.
I think that benefits Wizzy, though, just considering the 2 type of players that are there. I feel like it's mentally draining to go through all of these extremely hard and like matches. And I think Wizzy is the type of player I mean we say it often. Wizzy should be at the highest level of Trackmania, playing against the highest level of players, and he's that caliber of player that he knows what he needs to do in these rounds. So in my opinion, that would favor Wizzy. So that's probably why I'd put him second ahead of EPOS.
Solid argument, and that would mean that our winners bracket final, our grand final for the tournament, would end in the same way as our winners bracket final. I think we're saying maybe still a question mark over second place. Fairly unanimous that Babz should win this tournament, which means that now there's no excuse for underperforming come the weekend. And Acro's just unfortunately the loser out of this top 4, which, I say unfortunately the loser out of the top 4. Top 4 finish here in BIPC is incredible.
Now can we do a prediction for if Pack and Saber and...
Oh.
We're reading the bracket empty enough.
They were here.
That's do that in your own time is my advice. That is our prediction for this one. I think, are we going to do a little bit of a comparison to how Chris was feeling about these players a while ago? Is that the plan here? That's what my schedule says.
No, a tier list does not exist.
Wait, hang on. I have a... Oh wait, no, I don't have it on the. I sent it to you, right, Babz? Did I send it to you?
You did, but I mean, Chris would need to get this up, consent to having it on stream, which is probably the main challenge here.
We can just start posting links to it in chat, and everyone can find it in their own time. If we just read out the URL letter by letter, then
and just scrolling through the Mark reacts.
I think it would be an interesting thought experiment after BIPs to go through and maybe come up with some sort of opinionated power ranking.
Yeah,
that
seems like fun as well. I don't know if we're not going to bring it up here. Is there anyone who has massively jumped or massively fallen from where you are ranking them, Chris?
Hendo.
Yeah, there you go. Look, do you know what? That's all we needed. We've done map order. We've done some predictions there. I think in general, BIPC is going to be very, very good, and everyone should watch it.
Thanks for watching.
Full stop. That is end of statement. And yeah, like I mean, it is absolutely. It's fantastic tournament. Support from ITB's wonderful as well. And it's just there's going to be so many good matches. Like again, you said it, Babz. Shocked if every match actually goes the way we predicted.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if it did, I will not shut up about it. I mean, and that is a promise. If Chris beats me, but we get everything else right, then it's who cares. But yeah, no, for sure, it's just going to be, as a player that is just trying to at least get through one match, and then I'm looking forward to just enjoying watching our community do what it does best, and that's just compete at a really high level. And I'm just so glad, that everybody is so invested in this as we are behind the scenes, because it's very much just a really cool project to be a part of.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, why don't we talk a little bit about how the first BIPC then came about, because it really was one of the first big tournaments of this new wave of the kind of British Irish community that we were talking about at the top of the show. I don't know who here was most involved in getting that off the ground. It's probably a good starting question. Hands raised. Who feels like they helped?
Everyone.
Oh, wrong way.
That's it. Everyone.
No, everyone. Initially, like when Trackmania with TM 2020 came out, me and Jay came back to the game after having not played. I hadn't played for 9 years. Jay hadn't played for 5 or 6 years.
8 years, actually.
8 years, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't long after you.
Okay, and then
bro, Babz hasn't even been alive that long. That's crazy,
man.
And then we found a stream from Scotty at TM Scotsman, and we just jumped in and we were talking in chat, basically getting the history of what's happened in the last few years from him live on his stream, and he was telling us about TMGL and this new format and how the maps had changed to be this like mixed style and all that kind of stuff, and we were saying in chat like, it'd be great if we had like a LAN or like a British tournament or put some prize money behind something. And then that idea kind of went away. We played the game. We had our little Discord server for the boomers. Entered a tech tournament and did terribly. And then the server started to grow. We ended up having TSCC spring 2021. The very first season of that, the team was me, Jay, Berserk, and Killjoy. And Jay and I had been talking about running a tournament for a while, and I think Berserk and Nairuko had also been talking about, like, wouldn't it be great if there was a British and Irish specific tournament, and starting to think about that. And then because me and Jay were in voice with Berserk, just ended up getting mentioned. And then I got some DMs from Berserk going, let's do this. And then we ended up starting a little private channel. Came up with some ideas for the 5 maps. Berserk went out and sourced the maps, and then I embarrassingly wasted essentially 9 months procrastinating as essentially at that point the only admin of the Discord, because it was myself, Jay, and Jono until the end of 2021. So the first 18 months of the Discord, essentially me. Jono was off playing badminton and Jay was off trading.
Yeah.
And then after many attempts of trying to come up with a rule book and come up with a plan and just failing, I ended up putting out an announcement in the Discord saying, can people volunteer? And this was in December 2021. Volunteer to be an organizer of an event, a moderator of the server, or an admin. And we ended up having a whole bunch of people volunteer. We had Asa, Idol, Leo, I don't want to name everyone, but like Sean, KJ, a whole bunch of people.
KJ.
And the whole team basically were like, okay, what's the idea? What's the plan? What would this rule be? What would that rule be? What would those maps be? What date would it be on? And within about a month, from middle of December to the beginning of January, like, okay, we have an event. We've got a little bit of prize money. Let's announce it and do a crowdfund, and hopefully that will increase. And it did. We announced £500, and it went to 1,200, I think, or 1,150, something like that. So the crowdfund was really successful. And I think KJ was responsible for the spreadsheet. Idol was responsible for some of the server stuff. Also spoke to all the server admins and the mappers or the casters. Berserk did all the maps and did a lot of the videos before the tournament went out. I did the rule book. Like everyone just did a little bit, and whenever a problem came up, someone was just like, "I'll do that." It was just a really good team effort, and everyone just kind of got on with it. And then once that whirlwind of an event finished, we all just kind of went, "Oh." And didn't really. There was basically no messages at all for a couple of weeks in the admin channel because it was a massive whirlwind where we were all exhausted. Yeah, that's essentially how it came about. It's just a kind of confluence of Jay and I talking about it, and Berserk and Nairuka talking about it, and just happened to talk about it in the presence of each other, and spiraled from there.
And then you decided to do it all over again.
Eventually, yeah. We probably could have done more things in 2022. The fact that there was 6 months between the Cup at the beginning of the year and the league at the end was a little disappointing. It would have been nice to have 2 Cups that year, or like a couple of seasons of the league, but we got there in the end. And I think 2022 was a really, really interesting growth year for the Discord, because we went from having me as one admin, essentially, to a whole group of organisers. We had people like Doc running RPG nights and running the kind of one-off turn up and play things on a Friday night. We had Lawnmower hosting a different type of RPG night, and then just lots of events happening in the server. We had, like, when TSCC didn't happen, we had the regional kind of campaign-based tournament. So there was lots of just community-driven stuff where someone went, "I've got an idea, I'm going to run with it," and we went, "All right, we'll make some channels. You do you. Good luck. If you need any help, let us know." So it's a real big community effort. So we didn't really feel the need to run anything specifically, but we knew that there was a desire to have more kind of official pro level events, if that makes sense, on mixed maps, really difficult maps that really push people's skill and get people excited to train.
I think BIPC did a brilliant job of that. It was like I joined the Discord like probably a few months just before BIPC. Was semi-interested in Trackmania. I kind of saw it as a good second game compared to a lot of the stuff I was playing at the time. And then I kind of got bored of other games, tried out Trackmania a little bit. Not necessarily. Normally, I go into games like with friends, and you have a group and you play it all together. And then here I saw a community, and especially the Irish community, because that's like where I've been focused on most throughout my time in TM. And it was like I joined this, and then BIPC 1 was happening, and it looked like this really official event, with some really well worked stuff. The maps look really cool. These players, I'm hearing stories about them, and like Hotswat, and he's like a legend from the past. But like Pack is playing, but I know who Pack is, so I'm like, oh, I'll sign up, just and I'll see how good I can do. And then a few days into the tournament, I see I can actually make top 32 here. This is kind of cool. And then eventually I end up making that, and then go out horribly in the first match because I'm terrible in rounds because I haven't played the game, for like I've been playing the game for like 5 months at this point. But anyway, like I feel like that's so many people who joined the Discord at the same time as me saw this event. It was an inspirational thing almost, because that brought everyone together to watch this one thing. And I've become admin since then, but I've said to Chris that like he can be proud of that, and like the other admins of like what they did, because that really was like a momentous moment. And I mention it when we come back to like BIPC 2, is like that development from BIPC 1, me being almost like a little kid with starry eyes watching this big event, just being happy to play. And then BIPC 2, I was fortunate enough to be the person to actually officially announce the event. And like that, for me, that is massive, and that means a lot to me, and I think it's just something to be very grateful for like myself and other people in the community.
I think one of the really cool things about our community is like people like yourself, people like an Idol or a KJ or whoever. They're just doing this because they love it, because they wanna see the entire community succeed and improve. That's kind of at the point I'm at. I'm doing it because I really enjoy it. Like I might go out 20th in the tournament. That's our prediction. But I would be perfectly content with that. I could sit back and put my feet up, admin some matches, and watch really high level Trackmania for an afternoon or two.
I mean, look, all of this passion, so many people so invested, and you're letting me and Hotswat cast the finals. I mean, I don't know, guys. This is, I don't know about it. But it is, like you say, I mean, it's absolutely, I've said it before and I'll say it again, like Trackmania is by far my, because I cast a few games. I do a lot of Rocket League stuff. I've done League of Legends in the past. I've done random card games here and there, but like Trackmania is my favorite game to cast by far, partly just because I love the gameplay as well. I'm significantly worse than anyone else on screen at the moment here at the game, but like I love playing it. I love the community around it. I love the events that are run, like just the gameplay itself. Like it's a really fun game to be involved in. It's a really easy one to get passionate about as well, because the community makes it easy to get passionate about, because it's just nice people. And, you know, people like yourself, Chris and Jay, make it that as well, because there's so few game spaces that have people who you can come in and be like, okay, there are stable presences here. You know, people who've been around, who are nice, who are welcoming, who are willing to show you what's going on and set things up so that people can do things when they're new to the game. And like that is a huge part of why the community is so successful, you know?
Yeah. I think no, it's just important to show that that because often, you know, like especially with the level of content and the quality of the content that our community produces, like I'd like to say that
wild, it's so high quality, man.
Yeah, like I mean, like you don't see this from a lot of other like communities. I mean, it's really cool. We interact with other communities. They have their events, we have ours. But I'd like to say that we've set up a lot of things over
like secretly looking down your nose at them, Babz, are you? That's,
just whisper it quietly. but we do a pretty good job, and I think for people in the community, like they nearly come to expect this level of quality, and you know, you just can't forget that behind it, it's a small group of people who are just doing this out of passion in their free time. So, you know, just being grateful for what we have here and what we're all able to engage with is important to do.
And I suppose then really the big final kind of question of the night as we look to the future, you know, what is next for British and Irish Trackmania? We're very focused on British and Irish Pro Cup. Finishes this weekend, the second edition. It's big, it's huge. There's sponsorship this time around. I guess Chris and Jay, Chris especially, where are we going from here? Where are you leading us next? The promised land is somewhere in the distance, and you've taken on a lot of responsibility to get us there.
Wherever everyone wants to go, really. Just listening to the feedback from all the events. Every event we put out a channel and just, you know, publicly request feedback. We got a lot of good feedback from BIPC1, which is what led to the format changes this time round. We got not quite so much feedback from BIPL, but I think that's a good thing. I think the format was a little bit better. And just listening to people in voice chat and in the text channels, and voice chat especially, people can be a bit more candid. I think there's a big clamoring for a get together, for an event that people can attend. Whatever Demon Dragon in chat saying LAN at the exact moment I said that.
Well timed.
I think there is a big clamoring for LAN, and we really want to make that happen. But it's just how do we make that happen? How big is it? How small is it? How spectacular is it? Or how kind of comfortable is it? Like, we need to figure all that stuff out and do it within our means, because this is a completely community-run event. We have to do everything within our means, but we do want to make that happen. But as for the online stuff, the plan this year was to have BIPC in Q1, and then 3 seasons of the league, probably May, August, and November, something like that. But the TMGL schedule was prohibitive, let's say, for grassroots events. They just take up all of the time in the first 6 months of the year. Good luck running anything. So we moved BIPC to be in between the 2 TMGL seasons. And I think our plan at the moment is probably to do 2 seasons of the league, summer and November again. Whether that's 2 seasons of British and Irish Pro League, or whether one of them might be slightly different, is yet to be seen. But we've got an idea
Kicking
Uh,
for that.
the Brits out.
Yeah, everyone
League.
except
Let's go,
British
baby.
and Irish are allowed to enter. Yeah, we've got an idea on what we might want to do with one of them, but it's just an idea we need to talk about after the Cup, because we're focused on the Cup at the moment. But that's pretty much it from us. Probably a couple seasons of the league, and hopefully some sort of LAN at some point.
Sounds incredible, you know. I mean, that is the hope. Jay, if there is a LAN, you're going to be there. You're going to make it out of your way to get there and see all the new faces that have showed up and experience LAN for the first time in years.
It's difficult for me because I used to work for the company that runs the biggest LAN in the UK. So I've been on both sides of it, and I know
Is that Insomnia? Is that which
yeah,
LAN is that?
Insomnia. Yeah. I worked for multiplayer for quite a few years there. So you know, and before that I was attending it for a long time, obviously. And I think you know, Chris is not over-egging it when he talks about the work involved and trying to get the right scale and everything for an offline event, because there's a lot more kind of money involved in trying to make sure that it's you know, somewhere that's attendable for people and they can get there. And do you use, you know, hardware that's provided by someone else? Do people bring their own computers? You got to think about who's looking after the internet. Like, there's so many things to think about for an offline event. So yeah, I think, like, I'm craving it as much as anyone, I think. And I think, honestly, I look at the UK community now and it's like just mind blowing. It feels like we're at the stage that France was at in that first original boom, you know. Like, we're a country that has just got so many good players now and so many good community members as well, like the casting community and the mapping community. Like, it's really pretty mind-blowing. So yeah, I think an offline event of some sort is, like, definitely something that everyone really wants. But yeah, the shape it takes is going to be the hard part to figure out for everyone, I think.
It feels like it's almost at a point where you'd need to be careful, because it's obviously easier to arrange if you're doing a smaller venue and you're doing like a PC cafe somewhere. But I think at that point you'd probably almost be having to turn people away because there's going to be so many people who want to attend, and that is a tough balance to strike. And that's why I'm delighted to announce that we're all doing the meetup. We're all just going to Babz's gaff. We're all just going to show up one day. I think that's it. We
don't mind meetups.
If you enjoy being in a 24 square meter apartment,
I reckon we could pack like 50 people in there, and if we bring a couple of laptops as well, then we could still get a bit of Trackmania going in one of the corners.
I mean, you know, luckily electricity prices aren't going up, you know.
we all buy DSs and we all play Trackmania DS and Babz's gaff. That's how we get a Trackmania meetup going. We figured it out. I think we've reached the point where, unless anyone has anything else they really want to talk about tonight, we're coming to a natural stopping point, a natural slowing point. I don't have any fun zoology facts to round out the end of the... Does anyone else have a zoology fact they want to throw out there? Yeah. Okay, I lied. I do have a zoology fact. The word bear, okay? It does not come from the Old English word for bear. It comes from the Old English word for wild animal, because there was a superstition where, for people who were using Old English and Old Germanic languages, that if you said the name for the animal, one would show up and eat you. And so they just called them wild animal instead. And so the word bear has come from the word from wild animal instead of the word for bear. Isn't that a fun fact? I think that's a very fun fact. And then related, Babz, hang on a second, is the fact that there's the constellation Ursa Major. And so the Arctic was called the Arctic because it's north. And they were like, that's the direction that the bear stars are. And then the Antarctic was called Antarctic because it's the no bears. And then by genuinely pure coincidence, there's bears in the Arctic and no bears in the Antarctic. And that's just... I think that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, there's zoology facts for you. I managed to pull them out. Does anyone else have anything else they want to throw in there before we
I think
wrap things up?
As a great man once said, and on that bombshell.
That is absolutely the way to finish things off. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us tonight. Make sure you tune back in for the British and Irish Pro Cup 2 wrapping up this weekend. Kickoff at 2 o'clock on Saturday. Am I correct in saying that? For the stream here. Make sure you tune in for that, and it'll be the same time then on Sunday. Tune in back next week for another edition of Cuppa The Day, where we discuss how badly wrong all of those predictions that you saw earlier in the night went, and how crazy it was that Babz went out in only 2 matches. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.